I always have this dichotomy of emotion when it comes to this venue because I love it. I love everything about it except for one thing. And that is that I go back to, and I'm not blaming my mom for this, but I'm somewhat blaming my mom for this, that when I was a kid, when we would walk around the great Indiana State Fair, my mom would always exhale and say, it just means summer's coming to an end. And that's my only buzzkill about the Indiana State Fair, which is where we are located, and this is always fun. It is a tradition, and it is one that I enjoy greatly. We are in front of the Dairy Bar here at the great Indiana State Fair, right along the main midway. Those that are riding the little sky ride that goes right over us right now, we are just in front of the Coliseum, where we are 3 weeks away from perhaps its most famous moment, 60th anniversary, pretty much right where we are sitting, Jimmy, in the first week of September of 1964 when the Beatles played. They played two concerts, one just behind us in the grandstand, one just in front of us at the Coliseum. But lots of people walking around, and we've got milkshakes, we've got grilled cheese, and we've got Colts to talk about. We've got Bob Kravitz to talk to. Loaded show, and a lot of fun to be out here.
I want to piggyback off of your comment regarding your mom saying it's the end of summer. Parents, I'm not going to pretend to give parenting advice, but don't ruin the fair by reminding your kiddos that school's right around the corner. Well, or for some, it might have already started.
For most of these kids, it's already started, right?
But, it should be a time to have elephant ears and enjoy milkshakes from the Dairy Bar and get a giant tenderloin.
Now, let's ask this gentleman right here. Has school started for you already?
No.
You're not skipping school, are you?
No.
What's your name?
Henry Sutton.
Henry Sutton? Where do you go to school, Henry? Christ the King. All right, there, the pride of Kessler, Henry Sutton. There you go.
Nice.
See, so
Listen to you guys every morning.
your dad listens to us all the time?
Yeah,
Well, please apologize for us, could you? tell your dad that Jake says hi and Jimmy says hi, all right? All right, there we go. You can tell it's summertime because he referred to us as the morning.
He did. You're right. You don't have a sense of time at all at that age.
He actually, for a second, he thought he was talking to Andy Sweeney, and he was like, that guy's way too calm. And he walked away. He's not wearing Crocs.
He expected to get an immediate jolt of energy, and
That's
then
right.
You weren't able to deliver because you weren't Andy.
That guy's really laid back. So anyway, we are here for the American Dairy Association of Indiana. If you are going to be at the State Fair today, please come by and say hello. We would love to see you, and we have plenty to talk about over the course of today, including Team USA in the Olympics. Still, kind of one of those Olympic sports that is the length of it. I mean, so many of the other sports in the Olympics have wound down. But let's get right to the news at hand in terms of the Colts, Jimmy, and everything going on up in Grand Park in Westfield. Obviously, the big news yesterday, and really nothing new to report on that, but the dust settles a little bit, and it kind of becomes a clearer picture in terms of the timetable for Josh Downs. What we know is that the Colts wide receiver was injured yesterday. It is a high ankle sprain. That is typically a 4 to 6 week injury, and of course, and let me just be the first to tell you, if you go back to like the time of the building of the Egyptian pyramids, okay?
Way back.
When the Egyptian pyramids were being built, and a lot of people don't realize this, but, nobody knows the exact way that the Egyptian pyramids were built, but I think it's safe to say probably there were people doing it that it wasn't necessarily their choice to be working on the pyramids. But let's say, let's keep it positive here and say that there was a group that was commissioned to do it. Let's say that was a big architecture company, right?
They got the huge budget. They're ready
That's
to go.
right. They got the contract. They got the deal done. Now, so with that, in that group, and we'll call them, what should we call them, the group, our Cairo Engineering, right?
I like it. Yeah.
Cairo Engineering and Architecture is putting together the pyramids. And they had a guy, 3 weeks into the building of the pyramids, they had a guy that had a high ankle sprain. And if you were to go back and look at the hieroglyphics and interpret them, what they would say is it's a high ankle sprain for the guy that was building Tier 4 of the pyramids, but they believe that he's going to be on the short end as opposed to the long end of the window. Everybody in the history of mankind and womankind, everybody going all the way back that has ever had a high ankle sprain, anybody that is analyzing and prognosticating for that high ankle sprain has said, well, the good news is we think actually they're going to be on the short end of the recovery window. I've heard that. If I had $1 for every time I've heard that, I would have 10 grilled cheese sandwiches sitting here in front of us.
Oh, man.
I'm not sitting here trying to be a pessimist, but I'm a realist. I hope that's correct. I hope Josh Downs, because of the fact that he's a younger guy, and it is true it is true. Some players heal faster than others. There are some players that were just fast healers. There were others that it was more lengthy. The body reacts. Everybody's body reacts differently. I totally understand that. And I'm not making light of it, but I think that you go into things and you temper your expectations a little bit by expecting for and preparing for worst-case scenarios. And the worst-case scenario for this would be that it's nagging and it lags a little bit, and that goes into the regular season and you go a couple of weeks without Josh Downs. Less than ideal. However, the good news is that oftentimes you can look at the totality of a season and you look at the end of a year or the middle of a year and you say, you know what? Look how much they benefited from the fact that A.D. Mitchell all of a sudden had to get reps because Josh Downs was out. And in weeks 1, 2, and 3, when a lot of times younger players are sitting and they're simply observing and watching, they were thrown into the fire. Now, A.D. Mitchell probably is going to get reps regardless. But there are guys on that roster, Jimmy, that the reality is that if Josh Downs is unavailable, then it's going to mean additional looks, additional reps, additional pressure for someone else, and that is going to allow and facilitate for them to only be stronger when they most need it.
My fear, and ordinarily I'm the glass half full gentleman, so I apologize for ruining the good vibes you built up there. My fear is that if this turns into a multi-week thing where Josh Downs winds up having the high ankle sprain lead to a nagging issue where he's out, let's just say he misses the first 4 weeks of the season, just for the sake of argument. The same thing would then happen to the wide receiver core that's happened to your defensive line, which is with the loss of Samson Ebukam, and granted that one is for the entire year. With the loss of Ebukam, Jake, the biggest thing that we've talked about in terms of a regret or in terms of a unfortunate complication to his season-ending injury, their depth is gone. You feel like they've lost a massive part of what can make that unit thrive late in games is their ability to have multiple guys making different impact plays and keeping legs fresh. And when you take Josh Downs off the board, even in this instance, to clarify, as we know, it's not a season-ending thing. It's a 4 to 6 week timeline. If he winds up being, like you mentioned, Jake, like everybody since the Egyptians have said about high ankle sprains, that they'll be back on the short end of that. Okay, let's say he is, and he's ready for week 1. Well, then you dodge the bullet and you're happy with it. But if he's like most human beings and most athletes, where it winds up being he misses week 1 or he misses a couple of weeks, you're either asking Anthony Gould
Mafiro, by the way. Mafiro is the fella that had the high ankle sprain building the pyramids, right? and at the time they said Mafiro is 6 weeks. And they said, no. Not that. High end of that, 4 weeks. 4 weeks, Mafiro fast healer, right?
Right.
Just so you know.
This room from a depth standpoint with Josh Downs, let's say he misses a couple games, starts to look a little bit more like the receiving room from a year ago, where you're not worried about Michael Pittman Jr. You think you have an interesting rookie in A.D. Mitchell. Last year that was Josh Downs. And when is Alec Pierce going to prove to us that he is long in the tooth for being that deep threat that takes the top off the defense? And then you're looking at other options like Ashton Doolin or Anthony Gould, guys that I don't necessarily – I mean, it's hard to say with Gould. He's a fifth-round selection in this year's draft. But with Doolin, you know what he is at this point. So the depth is what gets undercut there. And that doesn't mean it's necessarily going to cost you the season, but it asks now on both sides of the ball young rookies to accept a baptism by fire aspect, or worse yet, Jake, if they think Gould is the better option, then you're asking a fifth-round rookie to be the one to go ahead and hold that weight. So it's depth is the biggest thing for me of the negatives from all of this with Josh Downs' injury.
I love this text, by the way. You know, I'm naturally kind of a cynical guy, right? Did you know that? Are you aware of that fact?
I knew you prepare. I knew you were a big preparer. I didn't know you were naturally cynical.
This is a great text. It's amazing to me, Jake, that yesterday Josh Downs woke up as Josh Downs, got a minor injury, and today he wakes up as Jerry Rice. There's an element of that, right?
There is an element to that, but, like, it's not necessarily a minor injury. Like it's variable depending on the grade of the sprain.
Hang on, they're taking a picture of us. I got to sit up. I got to suck in. I can't talk right now because then I look fat.
I'll take one for the team, and I'll continue talking while the picture's being. But you're looking at a wide variety of things. What's the grade of the ankle sprain? What's his pain tolerance with it? Like it varies from guy to guy. If you're able to actually make this something that really goes away by week 1, or if it's something that irritates you through the rest of the season. And how many times over the last 3-4 Colts seasons have we seen a key player have some nagging injury, a la Andrew Luck, a la Shaq Leonard, that winds up keeping them from being 100% for the whole year?
That's the challenge, right? I mean, the challenge is exactly that, of cleansing the palate, right? In other words, we have a natural tendency to find something that's before us and immediately compare it to that with which we're familiar. And when it comes to a high ankle sprain, and yes, I'm the first to admit, I mean, this is the best news ever. The best news ever is that we are into the north end of the Indianapolis Motor Speedway and turning the lap that is Colts training camp.
Sure.
We are nearly complete here, right? We're like out of turn 3 in terms of camp at Grand Park and everything that goes into it.
We got preseason football this
weekend.
And
the talking point is the fact that their slot number 3 receiver is going to be out a month. That's the biggest talking point. That's actually good news, right?
Yeah, look, yes, from that standpoint of looking at the depth chart and looking at where you would not want to have issues occur, it is not your worst case scenario. Our biggest bars going into camp was for Anthony Richardson and whether or not he stays healthy. And Lord knows I don't want a mob on my hands, knocking on wood as we speak. So far, so good for him, right? We're only into the throes of camp, and you see the horizon of week 1 right down your sights. But so far, so good for Anthony Richardson. That said, I would argue Josh Downs is the second most important, certainly wideout on this team, because Michael Pittman Jr., him, and then, everybody else auditioning for also ran. It's a tough loss, and you're going to have guys step up, whether it is Gould or Mitchell. Somebody is going to have to step up if Downs is forced to miss time. And it's another, Jake, it goes back to why maybe I'm preaching for perfection from Chris Ballard. Maybe that's an unfair bar. But it goes back to why I wanted an established tight end here, or I want perfect weapons, or as perfect as you can get for Anthony Richardson, because he's already having to go through the de facto rookie season, right? He's already going to have to go through expectations of being a polished quarterback, even though he played 4 games last year. And now you're asking him to do that without his number 2 option in the passing game. It's just another straw on his back, and how long before it breaks.
By the way, that is the voice of Jimmy Cook. My name is Jake Query. Thanks for tuning in today to Query & Company here on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. We are out here in front of the Dairy Bar at the Great Indiana State Fair. People coming by. We have items given away, koozies. They're giving away drinks. And then, of course, we're going to have milkshakes. We're going to have grilled cheese later. So a lot going on. Jimmy, in terms of last night, anything fun or exciting for you? Anything in the world of sports that you decide? For example, White Sox starting a new streak.
With
one down, 21 to go.
With a new manager, by the way. They fired Eddie Garrison's right. They fired their manager yesterday.
Because 21 was where it was simply too much, right?
Yeah, at that point, it's time to – well, not just that, but 21 of your last 23, right? Because you wound up losing winning one.
They lost the 21 in a row, and they're like, okay, now that we've made history, now we're going to make a move, right?
Best thing I watched was both after the show and then the re-air as well during Olympics coverage last night. Shout out to Quincy Hall from behind, Jake, winning the 400-meter gold yesterday in track and field. The United States is all over the place with dominance on track this Olympic cycle. It's been great. You've seen 2 Americans now in Cole Hocker and Quincy Hall come from behind to defeat Brits. I mean, if that's not America, I don't know what is.
That's
Jake.
right.
Come on.
That's right. All that we needed was some tea to throw around.
Anything fun?
Played golf yesterday.
Shoot them straight?
You know, I actually didn't have a bad round.
That's nice.
I think Dr. White yesterday said he gave me a C+. Some shots I got an A, but then some shots were not as good, and so therefore overall he gave me a C+.
How was the curve?
I can't complain with that.
All right, good. So would you say your curve was a C+, or he curved you to a B-?
No, he He said overall C+.
Okay.
But here's the thing. I hit them straight. Now, I didn't know this. Golf. Do you fatigued when you golf? You don't think that it's like an overly – you're not physically exerting, but
depends how hot it is.
Like hole 15?
Yeah. It depends how hot it is.
The concentration level, and then my arm gets kind of sore, which is a little bit odd, right?
It all depends on the elements. If it's like a hot, muggy day, then yes, I'll raise the hand. I'll be a wimp and say, yeah, I get a little tired by hole 15. But if it's a nice day like today, where, I mean, yeah, you got to overcast a little bit right now, but temperature-wise, it's great. Yeah, I'm ready to go. Let's go play another 9.
Who is the most valuable player in the NBA?
Ooh.
Well, I mean, who's the guy that has won, like, I believe, 2 of the last 3 NBA MVP awards?
I would say Nikola Jokic, right?
Correct. Who's the second best player on Denver's roster?
Probably Jamal Murray.
Correct. So Jamal Murray knows a little something about playing with great players, right?
That's correct.
Did you see who Jamal Murray came out and said is one of the most underrated players in the NBA that he is increasingly becoming a fan of?
No, I missed that quote.
And it makes sense because they are teammates right now. They are playing with one another in the Olympics. But Jamal Murray is getting an up-close and personal look at something that in Indiana people are going to love.
Okay.
Jamal Murray yesterday said, the guy that I absolutely love playing with. And we thought going into the Olympics that the big advantage for the Pacers was going to be that Tyrese Halliburton was going to recruit players over, right? Guys were going to come to Indiana because they want to play with Tyrese Halliburton. They love the energy, the enthusiasm, the big shot capability, the open floor, the lob space, the creativity of Tyrese Halliburton. And yet, here we are in the Olympics, and the guy that's kind of been the story is not even playing for Team USA. But Andrew Nembhard, Jamal Murray came out and said, look, this guy is so underrated, and I love the way that he plays. He is absolutely, and I'm going to use a term that is probably overused a little bit in sport, but he's kind of a dog, right?
Yeah.
Like you just throw him in there and let it go, right?
Did we overlook something in regards to our Olympic coverage? And that is to say, we've been so laser focused on what Tyrese Halliburton can gain from Team USA because of the stories of previous Team USA rosters turning into actual NBA rosters, like what happened with the decision and LeBron and Wade and Bosh, and it pointing back to their time on Team USA. This is now the second major star in the NBA. Granted, he's on Team Canada with him, so, it goes without saying. But this is the second major star in the NBA after Shai Gilgeous-Alexander that has gone out of his way on the record to publicly praise Andrew Nembhard.
Yeah. I mean, as I meant, I totally agree. I mean, Jimmy, to me, the best case scenario has happened for the Pacers with both players. With Halliburton, it was going to benefit Indiana one of 2 ways. It was either going to benefit Indiana because he was going to go in and he was going to be a dynamic player that made everyone else better, and those guys were then, as a result, going to say, man, I want to go play in Indiana and play with Tyrese Halliburton. That probably has not happened, but because he hasn't gotten a lot of minutes. But that's not a bad thing because Halliburton has been forced, I think, to watch. And I know I've said this before. But there are multiple ways to be great leaders. But there are different ways that you lead. You can be a leader by being the guy that at halftime sits everybody down and is like, listen, here's what we're going to do, and really getting into guys, right? And speaking up at the right times and motivating guys. But look at Hoosiers. You've seen Hoosiers, right, Jimmy?
Of course. 3, 2, 1, let her fly.
That's right. Who's the leader who is the leader of the Hickory Huskers?
Jimmy Chitwood.
What guy says the fewest amount of lines in the entire movie?
Jimmy Chitwood.
Right. But everybody knows that he's the guy, right?
Yep.
So there's that element of leadership. But when you have guys, so you don't have to be vocal all the time to be a great leader. But Jimmy Chitwood was a leader of that team just because of the fact that he sat out in that grass field in in her backyard and shot shots all day long, and they knew that when the game was on the line, he was the guy, right? He didn't have to speak up. For Tyrese Halliburton to be able to go into these Olympic Games and watch LeBron James and watch Kevin Durant and know that, and we don't know, I don't know how vocal those guys might be in meetings and everything else, but these are the most accomplished and celebrated basketball players on planet Earth for the last 20 years.
Yes.
And yet, even with that, they go in and they literally are like, okay, I am going to be a great leader, and the way that I'm going to be a great leader is not by sitting down guys and lecturing them through, but the fact that I'm about to let them see that I am going to elevate my game to the point where no one is going to beat us. And part of how they elevate that game is their defensive pressure that they apply. And for the Pacers, I think it's very good that Tyrese Halliburton has had to sit and watch and see exactly that. And the leading by example of the fact that the example they are setting is our leadership comes first and foremost with the intensity increase that we provide when the stakes are higher. And I think that's good for Halliburton to witness that. Conversely, for Andrew Nembhard, the benefit that he was going to get was not necessarily going to be by him sitting and observing that kind of thing for Team Canada, but rather by him getting his own confidence increasing, which he's been a pretty confident guy, obviously. But just in figuring out, his offensive skill set and everything else, the games that he's had in the Olympics, it's put him on the map a little bit, Jimmy. But at the same time, I think it has solidified for him, like, I can be a guy. I can be the guy, right?
Yeah.
When I need to be. And it's huge for the Pacers because that increased confidence, I think, is going to be big.
Do you ever have a recollection of any moment in your life, somebody maybe close to you tells you one thing, like, Jake, you should really do this. Like, you should, I don't know, jog more often. And you're like, no, I don't need to do that. And then somebody else tells you, no, Jake, you should jog a little bit more. And for whatever reason, the second person that tells you it, you're like, you know what, that's actually a good idea. And then the first person's like, what the heck, I've been trying to get you to do that all along. And now person B comes along and tells you that, and now you're going to go do it. Maybe, and I realize I'm going on a plank here, but maybe that happens defensively for Tyrese Halliburton. The Pacers have told him, hey, you got to play a little bit more aggressive defensively. And he's like, nah, I'm all right. But then he sees Team USA and not being in the rotation, and Steve Kerr telling him, no, man, you got to be a better defender. And maybe then he takes a step forward because of that.
Yeah, it's hard to argue that. I mean, again, that's the other beauty of it, right? Is
because that's the next step to being a leader is doing it on both ends, right?
And you know what? Like, okay, so let's let Steve Kerr be the bad guy, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, he's only got to play with him for another 5 days or whatever, and then you can go back to. I don't think that he's necessarily hurt over it, but you get what I'm saying.
Right.
By the way, they brought food over.
They did.
What did they bring here?
That looks like barbecue mac and cheese. And I don't know what.
Oh wow, there is mac and cheese on that. Wow,
that looks delightful. And then I would assume that's some type of looks like a donut type of, with maybe some brisket in there, perhaps. I don't know.
I think that is a brisket donut that they brought over. This is the great thing about the State Fair, right?
Yes.
Now I'm going to let you dive into that.
Okay.
Somebody told me I got to jog more.
I was either that or I didn't know where to go with the analogy. You're the king of analogies for that reason. I was going to insult you either way. One was going to be eat more vegetables.
Somebody
either
told
way,
me,
you were
by
going
the way, I was out today and somebody comes up to me. I was at the Bailey and Wood golf outing, and Mike Wood had us out to be kind of the starters for it. 208 golfers out at Dye's Walk on the south side. And somebody came up to me and said, hey, Kevin Bowen tried to do an analogy this morning. And I guess a couple people said, like, no, wait a minute. Copyright infringement, right? I was thrilled by that. I was happy to know that Kevin was, that after that amount of time, maybe I kind of had that sort of an influence
after the brush with greatness that he had for so many days in a row.
That's right. That's right.
Some rubbed off.
And then that people, especially, and here's the thing, I think Kevin's was a decent analogy. But if it was a bad one, it made people think of me because I'm the king of bad analogies. And my analogies are a lot like eggnog. You either love it or you hate it, and they go a long way, right? A little goes a long way.
Are they seasonal also?
That's right. My analogies, I bring them out December 10th, and you think to yourself, I haven't had one in a year. This sounds good. And you get excited. You go out to Marsh's, and you buy yourself an eggnog, and you bring it home, and you pour it, and you have about 3 sips. You're like, yeah, okay, well.
And then March 15th rolls around, and here's more eggnog, and I don't know.
March 15th rolls around, and you're like, okay, well, let's put green food powdering in that and call it a Shamrock Shake, and we're good to go. Because certain things are seasonal, like, for example, the Dairy Bar at the Indiana State Fair, which is where we are. We are going to be here till 3 o'clock today, broadcasting live right along the midway of the State Fair, which is always awesome. Bob Kravitz is going to join us just a couple minutes, but before that, Eddie, my understanding is that you have breaking news.
That is correct, Jake. One of our favorite guests that you have labeled, and I labeled as a true American hero, Rowdy Gaines, announced that the 2028 Olympics will be his final Olympics as an analyst for NBC. He will be retiring after the LA Olympics in 4 years.
Really? Okay, well, you know what? Well-deserved for sure. And why not? The beauty of that is it kind of makes it full circle because the 84 Olympics in Los Angeles was where he medaled, gold medalist, and so why not cap it all off? Hard to believe. 44 years later would be when that is after the 84 Olympics.
He'll be 69 years old at that point. I mean, now Rowdy still has the energy of a 19-year-old fresh ready to dive in the pool.
Well, he's rowdy.
But when Eddie shared that with me briefly when it came across the wire. Thank
you, Eddie.
When it came across the wire, 10, 15 minutes ago, and at first I thought he was retiring after this Olympics. So the fact that we still get one more cycle with Rowdy Gaines on home soil, very excited about that.
They brought a couple of forks. Can they bring additional,
I was going to say, yeah.
I don't know how we're going to do. I mean, literally,
we need like another plate.
We have a 9-pound mound of mac and cheese and barbecue brisket sitting in front of us, which looks fantastic. But we might need
we need another plate, some napkins.
A couple of plates, right? Bob Kravitz is going to join us on the other side. We'll get the latest on Colts camp and his thoughts on the Josh Downs injury, what it means for Nick Cross as well. Bob Kravitz on the other side as we are live at the Indiana State Fair, just in front of the Dairy Bar. You're listening to Query & Company. You're listening to it on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. There's where you will find us. We're just in front of the Dairy Bar. Bob Kravitz of Substack set to join us now. As a matter of fact, do we have Bob, by the way, Eddie? Okay, Bob Kravitz joining us on the program now. Colts camp underway, and Bob, hard to believe that they are coming towards the end of Colts camp, just because it seems like yesterday that things were gathering out in Grand Park. Let's get right to the matter at hand from yesterday, and that's the Josh Downs injury. A lot was made out of the fact that Nick Cross was involved in that. Do we overthink the potential of, like, oh, man, what's going to happen with Nick Cross, that he committed this egregious tackle in 7-on-7 that led to the injury of Josh Downs? So let's begin from the Cross side of things, because safety is a position of need. And where does Nick Cross stand? I don't mean because of that, but just where does he stand in terms of this wide open position within that room?
Well, I think he's one of three guys who's vying for that spot. It's funny. A couple of years ago when he was drafted, I had people telling me that this guy was the real deal. And no, he got the starting position pretty much out of camp. And then he played, 3 games and lost his job forever. So I don't know that I trust him in that position. I don't know that I trust any of those guys. If they don't sign Justin Simmons, it's amazing. It would be amazing to me, because here's a guy who was a Pro Bowl safety last year. He's not ridiculously expensive. You saw what Quandre Diggs got from the Tennessee Titans. I mean, this is a weak area for them, and to me, they've got to go out and get Justin Simmons and bring him in here.
Bob, in terms of the setup for Anthony Richardson at this stage, what have been your observations through him, and is this potentially, if you, let's say, eliminate Downs for the first 2 weeks, and there's no guarantee that's going to happen, maybe he is on the shorter side and maybe he's back in time for week 1, but is there a chance that by eliminating him, you're adding another straw to the camel's back, as it were, of high-pressure expectations for a quarterback that's only played 4 games?
Yeah, I mean, look, to me, he's not a rookie, but he's pretty damn close to one. And losing Josh Downs, who's looked phenomenal in camp, and his coaches and teammates can't stop saying enough good stuff about him. That's a big loss, whether it's a game or 2, or hopefully it's none at all. It's just a 4-week deal. But they don't know who their second wideout's going to be on the outside. Whether what they're going to do there. So I don't know. It's a tough loss for them at this point, but I think it puts more pressure on Anthony Richardson, because he's got to do more with less.
Bob, in your opinion, what has been the biggest storyline of this camp? Because to me, and maybe it's just because, we've been through a lot of these where there have been like major drama, major storylines, holdouts, etc. This one's been kind of
quiet.
It's not a bad thing. It's kind of been void of major drama, right?
Right. There's not a lot of huge position battles, which is probably a good thing. I mean, you've got a position battle at the cornerback spot, safety, tight end, but when you're not worrying about your quarterback, and that to me is the big story, is the fact there is no story with Richardson. He's looked pretty good all of camp. He's had a couple of days where he couldn't hit the broadside of a barn, but those have been few and far between. I think the fact that it's been a pretty quiet camp, really, up until Downs got hurt, unfortunately. But it's a good thing that it's been kind of a quiet camp, especially as far as the quarterback goes.
Bob, when we talk about Bob Kravitz is our guest, when we talk about the fact that it is Anthony Richardson's looked pretty good. I'll admit, to me, I don't know that I have the trained enough eye to be able to tell just in kind of walk-through or 7-on-7 drills whether he looks good or bad, right? I mean, that's – am I selling myself short there, or if he was not ready to go, would it be painfully obvious when you're watching it?
If you've ever watched Sam Ellinger, then you know what it looks like not to be ready. I mean, not to be that guy. No, look, you've watched enough football. I've watched enough football. 7-on-7, it's hard to tell a little bit, but he's been pretty accurate. He makes plays down the field, and look, we're not seeing the whole playbook here. We're not seeing him run the ball very much. So I think that the best part of this offense is going to be the running game. It's going to be Richardson and it's going to be Taylor, and everything else is just an add-on, really.
Bob, do you say that? Because I don't necessarily disagree with you. Bob Kravitz is our guest. Joins us on the Express Pro Tire and Auto guest line. Do you say that about running being the best feature of this team because, A, they have arguably the best running back in the entire league behind him in Jonathan Taylor, and you have Anthony Richardson, who we know can do it with his legs? Or do you say that because it's still such a large unknown what Anthony Richardson's going to be able to be as a thrower in this league, that it would be, I don't want to say safer, but it's smarter to say the running game is going to be best? But who knows, if he takes the leap forward Steichen thinks he can, couldn't it be a real passing element-aided offense if Richardson takes that leap forward?
Yeah, it could be, but looking at it, and not knowing exactly what Richardson is going to give you at this point, I just think that their personality is going to be on the ground. I really believe that. I mean, when you've got a Lamar Jackson type guy in the backfield with an elite running back, it just makes sense to me that they're going to be a run-first team. Now, Steichen likes to put the ball in the air. He likes to spread it around. But right now you got Pittman, and then I don't know who you got at number 2, and we don't know what the situation is going to be with Downs. So, the problem with this team in general is they're just one injury away at a lot of spots from, holy crap, what are we going to do now? So, and I think that's one of those positions. But, yeah, I think they're going to be more a team that's going to be run the damn ball, I think, for Indianapolis.
Bob Kravitz is our guest. He's on the Express Pro Tire and Auto guest line. Bob, when you talk about depth, to your point, is that indicative of the way the NFL is in 2024 with the cap era of you're going to have areas where you're thin, or has Indianapolis loaded up and gotten depth in too few areas? In other words, their two lines clearly are the areas where Ballard loves to have that depth. Did he put too many eggs in too few baskets and not spread it around enough?
Yeah, I mean, I look at the cornerback situation. Right now you've got 2 second-year guys probably going to start. One of those guys goes down, it's trouble. If Blackman, who has not stayed healthy in his career, if he goes down, they're in serious trouble. So, but God knows if a defensive lineman goes down, they've got 27 other guys to replace him. So, yeah, I think part of it is the cap and the fact that every team has got areas where they're sitting there going, we can't afford an injury here or 2 injuries or we're screwed. But no, there's a lot. There's areas where they're deep as they can possibly be, and like defensive line, and areas like safety and cornerback where they're not, where one injury and they're in serious problems.
Bob, why do you think Chris Ballard has yet to address the safety position?
From what I understand, I talked to a friend out in Denver, said that his feeling is that he's going to sign with an AFC South team this week or next week. I think, like most veterans, he's waiting. He's waiting for the best offer, and he's waiting for training camp to get over with. So, I think Justin Simmons is a guy that's been in the league a little bit, and I just don't think he wants to make a decision right away. So I don't think this is necessarily on Ballard at this point. Now, if he signs somewhere else, then feel free to rip Ballard all you want. But my friend seems to think he's going to end up with an AFC South team, and he's pretty sure it's Indianapolis. So we'll see. It makes sense, doesn't it?
Bob, yeah, I mean,
everybody, it's like a foregone conclusion that by most people that's who they would go after, and yet they haven't yet. And so I was just, there seems to always be a position that we assume that Ballard should be more aggressive about. Receiver it was for a couple of years there. And I don't envy Chris Ballard because it would be difficult to have people constantly wondering that. It just feels like that was a position that for sure they could use some depth, and they haven't gone after it.
Right. Well, every year it seems we all scream and yell about the lack of depth at wide receiver or offensive line, where they tried to make a go of it with Matt Pryor at left tackle and Danny Pinter at right guard. That was a disaster. Now we've got the safety situation and, to a lesser degree, the cornerback situation, where everybody's yelling, go get somebody, go get some depth. So I'm sure we can expect, if they don't do anything, we can expect a postseason mea culpa from Chris Ballard, because he does it just about every year.
Well, and Bob, that's the alarming trend about all of this, and why, again, I understand there's a human element to this where, you don't want people to lose their jobs, but at the same time, it's a different line of work when you're working in professional sports. It's a results-based business, and at some point, if every year there's still a clear area on the roster where complaints are being lobbied, be it by the media, be it by fans, be it by whoever, you outlined it, O-line, cornerback, safety, wide receiver. In all those examples, the people that were complaining were right. Those were all valid concerns, and it feels like for every hole that's maybe taped or plugged, it's like the old cartoon of someone trying to stop the Hoover Dam from breaking through, and you plug one hole and then three more spout up. That's, I think, where the frustration lies. It feels like for every step forward, there's two steps back, even though if he's right on Richardson, that's your flex seal, right? That's your,
right.
If he's right on Richardson, it'll plug up all the holes.
Well, I've made it really clear on my columns on bobkravitz.com. I thought I'd throw that in there. I've made it really clear that I think if Ballard fails to make the playoffs, if the Colts fail to make the playoffs, I think that should be it for Chris Ballard. That would be 8 years without winning the AFC South, 8 years of getting to the playoffs just twice, 8 years of winning just one playoff game. I realize you get the get out of jail free card for Andrew Luck, but it's time to move on. He's got his quarterback now. It's time to make the playoffs. I don't know if they're going to win the division. I still think Houston is the more likely candidate for that. But no, it's 8 years is enough. 8 years is enough, and unless they take that next big step, I don't think he should come back next year.
Bob Kravitz is our guest. Express Pro Tire and Auto Guest Line is where you can hear him. BobKravitz.com, Substack, both places where you can read him. Bob, does Tyrese Halliburton come back from the Olympics, not just potentially a gold medalist, but certainly a medalist, it would seem? Does he come back a more serious defender?
Yes. I think this was a good experience for him. I think, look, it was a dream season for him. Making the All-Star team, making the Olympic team, leading his team deep in the playoffs to the Eastern Conference Finals. He had a lot of people whisper sweet nothings in his ear, and for good reason. He deserved it. But now I think he's getting a little bit humbled. I think he's finding out that if he wants to play at that next level, or if he wants to play for the Olympic team, he's got to be a better defensive player. I think this is a great experience for him, and he'll come back a better, stronger player. Absolutely. Because if the Pacers want to, who knows, reach the finals, they need better defensive play from Tyrese Halliburton, no doubt about it.
Well, and the other thing, too, to me, Bob, is that, and I was saying this earlier, it has to help Halliburton. He's the youngest guy on that team, if I'm not mistaken.
Right.
But to be able to see the way that LeBron James and Kevin Durant and guys like that have nothing left to prove have gone in there and said, we are going to take this thing over as a team, and we are going to win. And the intensity and the seriousness with which they've approached it, to me, is the ultimate example of leading by example. And for Halliburton, I love that because that forces him to see that you can turn up the wick when it matters most. And I love that intensity that is being shown from those guys. Now, the other question I have about the Olympics is, who will more benefit from what has taken place in the Olympics? Halliburton in terms of the defensive aspect of it, or Andrew Nembhard just in terms of the overall continued rise of him as a player?
Well, I think Halliburton, because I think this goes to his pride. I think his pride's been hurt a little bit. I mean, he went there thinking he'd probably be the starting point guard for that Olympic team, and he's been displaced by a guy who I'm sure he thinks he's better than. So, look, Nembhard's been very good. I'm not sure. I get. Is it U.S. Canada coming up? Am I correct there?
U.S. Serbia is today.
U.S. Serbia today.
I think Canada's out, are they not?
Yeah,
I could be wrong on that.
Canada's bounced by France.
That's right.
2 days ago.
That's right. And I was watching France and Germany just now when
Yes.
you guys called. So that's been a heck of a game. Yeah, I think that Halliburton is going to get is going to derive more from this Olympic experience than just about anybody.
Hey, Bob, how much and I like it personally, but I'm curious. You went to school there. You probably have watched a lot of bad games there. What's the doggy's name? I love dogs. What's the doggy's name, Bob?
Well, I got my grand dog here for another couple of hours. That's Gordy, as in Gordie Howe. Now we've got
that
a
is
concert.
awesome.
We got Gordy and Espo both going at it. They're very excited.
They can
about
tour,
something.
Bob. They can tour. Let's go.
Okay, so it's
There
a
you
perfect segue, though, because Kurt Signetti's been barking a lot lately, and I like it. I'm here for it. Indiana needs it. But is Indiana going to be able to show that they've got bite with the bark?
Well, I went with a friend down to French Lick. I won't mention his name. He put $1,000 on the over for IU to get the over. I think it's 5.5 or 6 wins. Knowing IU's history, especially with new coaches, I wouldn't want any part of that bet. But you look at that schedule. I mean, they got 3 sure wins, you would think. 3 sure wins. I could see them winning 5 or 6 games. I could. I think he'll be humbled pretty quickly when he finds out that people don't go to the games. They just go out into the parking lots and party, But I think they'll be okay. But they got 45 new guys. How do you know if they're going to be any good if they got 45 new guys? So just looking at their schedule, I would say, honestly, they're probably about a 5-6 win team.
They didn't party like that at James Madison, Bob. I can promise you that.
Actually, I don't know, man. JMU likes to party, baby. You grew up in Virginia. You can go to Virginia Tech, whatever. You're a party guy, you're going to JMU.
Never lost the tailgate, baby.
My buddy Doug Weiler was a big JMU guy.
All right.
Hey, Bob, speaking of schedules, appreciate you mixing us into yours today. We'll let you get back to the Olympics. We'll let you get back to Gordy and the rest of the grandkids that are there. And we look forward to talking to you again. Again, BobKravitz.com, where you can read his work. Thanks, Bob. Appreciate it.
Bob.
All right. Thank you, guys. Take care.
Bob Kravitz on the Express Pro Tire and Auto guest line. We are live at the Indiana State Fair. I was nervous. A couple of stilters just went past. Like, those were impressive stilters.
I thought that was a steeplechase. Is that not what that was?
That's about what it looked like, man. I was impressed by that. But there's a lot going on at the State Fair, which is a lot of fun. And the host that has us out, the American Dairy Association, because we're just in front of the dairy bar, they're going to join us coming up just about 10 minutes from now, and we will talk about Jimmy's delicacy of choice for the day, I believe. I picked out for you, Jimmy, what it is that you're going to sample.
All right.
We'll do that in about 10 minutes from now as you are listening here on a Thursday to Aquarium Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. I would like to know which is more commonly played at baseball games, this song or anything by the outfield. Because if the outfield, Josie's on his vacation far away. A lot of times you hear that because that's the outfield, right? So
Yeah.
it only makes sense. I would like to thank, by the way, Bill Cash, who has brought me my Kincaid's Meat Market hat.
Nice.
I said on the air that I'd love to get a hat from Kincaid's,
Awesome.
and Bill shows up with a hat. And for that, and I kind of swindled Brooke here from the American Dairy Association of Indiana. I said, hey, Bill, I'll get you a milkshake for the hat. What kind would you like? And he said chocolate. And I said, okay. So, Bill, for the hat and the delivery, very much appreciated. There is your chocolate milkshake. Because Brooke will tell you that the softest way to people's heart when you are trying to show favor to them for a favor they did for you is to get them a milkshake from the Dairy Association. And they have some fabulous ones here. And Brooke brought me the best gift of all time. We'll tell you what that is when she joins us next. We are at the State Fair. You're listening to Aquarium Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. You're driving in the car, and this comes on all the way up. I mean, let me tell you. Entangle in your web.
That's actually the reason that people get stuck with us. They crank it so loud, ready to go on a rejoiner, and then the radio's broken forever.
Now, hold on.
That's the bit.
Now, I don't know if you know this or not, Jimmy, but yes, I'm touched by your show of emotion. But, should I be fractured by your lack of devotion? Should I?
Are you going to do more so Eddie can set you up for no turn up on the music
Yeah,
later?
no kidding. I learned my lesson
Beastie
from that
Boys.
the first time around. We were at the Indiana State Fair right along the Midway, as it is a tradition unlike any other, being at the Dairy Bar in front of for the American Dairy Association of Indiana. And Brooke Williams, who is the Director of Communications. I got the title right?
You did.
That one eludes me for some reason every year. Joins us now to communicate about the American Dairy Association, and you brought for Jimmy. Jimmy, you're already halfway through it, right?
I am. It's delicious, Jake. It is.
This
so good.
and every year you guys do a different flavored milkshake, right?
That is correct.
This is the blueberry shake.
The blue ribbon blueberry.
Oh,
blue ribbon.
Well, it is
blueberry
first place, no doubt.
Okay.
It's absolutely delicious.
How is it, Jimmy?
It's very good.
Now-
The blueberry is palpable. Delicious ice cream all the way around. Ready for it.
Brooke has brought out for me because I don't know what number year this is consecutive that I've said to you, hey, can you get me by chance a Swiss cheese grilled cheese sandwich? They're absolutely the best. But this is among many different flavors of grilled cheese that you can get, or variations, I should say, at the Dairy Bar. You also have the Melty Mess,
Yes.
correct?
This here is one of the two featured sandwiches. The Melty Mess has Havarti, cheddar, and Munster on sourdough bread.
Oh,
Now,
talking about.
is there a discount if somebody's from Munster, Indiana, and they come here? Do they get that? Is it less expensive?
$5.
$5?
And regular prices.
$5.
Okay, all right.
Bargain at twice the price, right? Now, you have a hot honey also, right?
Yes, the mozzarella and pepperoni, and with a little Mike's Hot Honey on there. Sweet Hawaiian bread with a little Italian
Oh, love
seasoning.
Yep.
Love that. And when do you guys come up with these variations? Who does come up with the different flavors? I'll use it for lack of a better
Is there a
phrase.
focus group?
We have a very committed staff of 8,
Okay.
and we devote one day to doing this
Really?
research.
That's impressive, right? Now, the favorite thing I think for a lot of people about the State Fair is the opportunity. I mean, this is obviously, an agricultural exhibition for the state of Indiana and the Indiana farmers and the work that they put in. That includes the dairy farmers of Indiana. They're, I think, really two benchmark events. One is the Indianapolis 500, which we've talked to you about. And then the other one is this week, actually, when the dairy cows are here where kids can go through and see them. I get a photo with a dairy cow every year, by the way. They are arriving this week, right?
That is correct. Tomorrow, and all the dairy shows start this weekend. So, yeah, very big time. And we even got new cow print awning on our dairy bar this year. Just, we want people to know that we're here for you. But no, in all sincerity, it's we represent about 700 dairy farm families in the state of Indiana, and this is kind of the pinnacle for a lot of them. A lot of the kids growing up on farms are involved in 4-H. They show cattle, so to come down and also to see how many people are loving the dairy bar each and every year, to see the long lines, it's a really cool, kind of just to put that really farmer in front of their community that they're used to.
This is probably a silly question because it's always packed here at the fair, but is there like a peak time of day perhaps for the dairy bar, or is it just never ending?
You ever been here for the $2 day, Jimmy?
Well, I know that was the easy answer, but
Yeah, it's kind of altered over the years. This is my 11th year working for the Dairy Association, and now that the State Fair opens, when so many kids are going back to school during the week, I think it's not as busy during the day.
Sure.
Nights are busy. The weekends are still going to be very, very busy. But, yeah, we find a lot of times people are still finding us even during the day.
Okay, the dairy, now it's a dairy bar, right? It's not a barn, it's a bar, right?
It's the dairy bar that is shaped like a barn.
But it is a bar, right?
It's the bar.
See?
branding, just BAR.
No, I'm
Yep.
telling you, this is. I don't know if you know, Jimmy. People will throw you down a flight of stairs over this. There's fights about it.
Oh, my wife almost wouldn't let me leave the house until I got it right.
You know that? You ever watch that Live PD on Reels Network? I was watching Live PD once, and they were called out for it. I mean, it wasn't a fight by any stretch, but a heated argument, and it was two people arguing over bar versus barn. They get very. That was back when they were doing the Beach Grove.
Chaps on Patrol Live has been trying to get in here for that exact type of fight.
That is exactly correct. I'm telling you. So. But it's a bar because it serves drinks, right?
Yeah.
And that includes chocolate milk. That includes regular milk. That includes, all the milk variations. But what else? Ice cream, right?
Hand-dipped ice cream, yes, 6 flavors. This year we're featuring mint chip ice cream, but we have the always popular butter pecan, chocolate, strawberry, vanilla, and moose tracks.
Moose tracks. Okay. Now, there's no moose in Indiana, though, right?
Not that I've seen.
You know, Matthew was just here saying that the Indiana State Fair is overrated.
I don't know what happened with Matthew.
And then he said that Maine doesn't have a state fair. And I said, well, then what are you arguing about,
It's
right?
tough. It's tough to join the state fair fight if you don't have one to represent at the table,
And
right?
we have moose tracks, and they're the ones with moose, for crying out loud. Okay, Brooke, let's go back to the dairy farmers of Indiana.
Yeah.
The American Dairy Association of Indiana, I think, is probably most synonymous with, and we talk about it a lot, the milk at the Indianapolis 500-mile race. That's a tradition that's been going on for years and years and years. Mm-hmm. You mentioned 700 families that are dairy farms. How many different dairy farms are there in Indiana?
I mean, the current number is like 694.
Okay, so we round that up, right?
So we round that up. That's right.
Okay.
But yeah, and all those farms are different sizes. So some farmers may only have 10, 20 cows. Some have a few thousand. So it all depends. But yeah, we're the marketing promotions agency for all Indiana dairy farm families.
And in terms of the state of Indiana and just the economic impact, I guess, of dairy farmers and the Dairy Association for Indiana, how does it rank, I guess, in comparison? I mean, Wisconsin, they copyrighted that America's Dairyland. I think it's a little overrated. But how does it impact Indiana?
Yeah, I mean, it's huge. I don't know the exact number of the thousands, really hundreds of thousands of jobs that are available in Indiana dairy farms, but I think we rank 13th nationally for milk production in the state of Indiana. So, when you're comparing all the different states, I hear about happy cows in California. We think we're doing all right around here. We're very fortunate that as far as our organization, we just represent the state of Indiana, which is why we can really talk about the Indy 500 tradition, the drink of milk, and why that means so much to us.
Have you thought about suing Wisconsin? Because they call themselves America's Dairyland, but we're doing okay here, right?
We are doing all right.
They're not providing to the entire country, right?
That's right.
I mean, it seems like a legitimate complaint.
I mean, it could be class action if you get other states in the Midwest. I mean, we might be talking about a real work session.
I mean, why
you
not?
guys also have, and maybe I'm just misreading the signing, but the bar itself is helped out by schools, students, volunteers?
Absolutely, yeah. You guys came on a good day. Lincoln Athletics is here today, and they have 40 of their student athletes helping out at the end of the night.
Is that Cambridge City, Lincoln?
It is.
Last time I was working in the bar, that's who I was with, was the kids from Cambridge City, Lincoln.
Yeah, and they're great. I just asked the coach today, I said, how do you keep these kids coming back every year? And he was like, once they get in there and they see how fun it is, and I mean, you're working with your friends,
right.
So it's not that bad of a summer gig for a day.
Did they mention working with me by chance?
I think they did. Somebody asked.
There was disappointment that you weren't there right now.
That's why there's 40 instead of last year's 45.
Well, that's why one window's closed today, because they're waiting for you to start working.
That's right.
Yeah.
So you have different school or organization groups for fundraising purposes.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, given that we have the number of dairy farms that we do all over the state of Indiana, different communities, so some of those farmers, their church back home wants to spend a day here. They want to scoop ice cream for a day, or, whoever it may be, an athletic group. But yeah, so every day we have, really, most days it's 2 different groups, one in the morning, one in the afternoon. We train them quickly, put them behind a window, and they're the ones that you see, and they're making all the sandwiches, running all the registers. So it's really, it's a really neat, very well run.
Is Jake at the point where he would be able to train the next class of
Have you
volunteers?
seen Jake make a milkshake?
I've not.
It's incredible. It really is incredible. Listen, have you been to Italy by chance, Brooke?
No.
Okay, so here's the thing. There's no reason for you to go there. Because if you go to Florence, Italy, you're familiar with Florence, Italy, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. In Florence, Italy, they have the main art gallery there is called basically Galleria Accademia, right? Mm-hmm. And in it is where you have a lot of Michelangelo's work, including David, which is probably the most well-known sculpture in the world. Mm-hmm. There's really no reason for you to go see that now, because you've seen me make a milkshake.
Oh.
It is not.
I wondered where you were going with
it's
this.
not. Tell me it's not a thing of art.
It is a thing of, some might call it art.
It's impressive.
Yeah.
Art is subjective. I mean, it's
Well, here's the thing, Brooke. Just so you know, I have no actual skill set in my life, and it's actually on my resume under achievements and awards.
I
The
like
fact
that.
that I can make a huge, impressive, sculpture-esque milkshake at the Dairy Bar. So I'm needing you as the Director of Communication of the American Dairy Association of Indiana, if you could, to at least lie for me in this standpoint.
Well, you know
okay?
what? We invite you back every year, so we're not
That's
offended.
something. Yeah. Clearly, sales aren't going down. I mean,
Actually, people, did you see the stilt people?
I did.
Okay, you see the reaction that people had for the stilt people?
Yes.
That's what it
Same
looks like
one?
when I'm
Okay.
handing out milkshakes.
Now I feel like I'm there.
You're like,
Okay.
wow, look at that. I had no idea. Look at this. I mean, it's impressive. I'm telling you. It's a tower. It's a tower is what it is.
You know what we need to do? We need to take one of your milkshakes down to the cheese sculpture.
I was going to say that. Yes.
That this year it's actually
Good
there's
segue.
Mona Lisa in American Cowlick instead of American Gothic. You can hold your milkshake up there and let people vote, which is art.
Now, I don't know if you know this or not, I got kicked out of one of the barns last year for attempting an American cow lick. It did not go over well. I love cows, as you know. It's my first ever word. Okay, so the cheese sculpture, though, is impressive, right?
It is 1,400 pounds of cheddar.
And they began this last year. I think we were here right when they were beginning to do it, right?
Yeah, they started this year opening day. So, yes, 6 days in, we've already unveiled the final product yesterday. And so we based it off of the theme of the fair, the summer of fun or the art of fun. So Sarah Kaufman, who has been doing the cheese sculpture here for 17 years, she partnered up with Nancy Baker, who is actually a gourd artist.
Really?
Yeah, we brought her in last year. And she carved
Transferable
some
skills.
cheese. Yeah.
Gourd to cheese. That's
Yeah.
common crossover.
Yes. So the two of them, I guess. I don't know.
You know, I don't know if you know, but usually you bring in somebody related to gourds to help you squash the competition.
Good
right?
one. Yeah.
See what I did
Eddie's
there?
not helping you.
Listen, you get access to this for free, Jim.
I know.
For crying out loud. Brooke, the last time that we talked to you, you were getting set, obviously, in the month of May. You guys were getting ready to present the milk. You had your veteran farmer and your rookie farmer that do the presenting, or at least your veteran and rookie presenter. And Joseph Newgarden wins it for a second straight year. He has been a huge friend of the Dairy Association. I know that it is not your job to have favorites for that, and you are certainly welcomed for any of the 33 drivers that get in. But Newgarden's pretty special for you guys, right?
Yeah, I mean, truthfully, Joseph reached out to us 4 years ago because he loves milk and wanted to see about a new partnership. We had never worked with an IndyCar driver before, or any driver, and so it's not like we took a chance on Joseph. He was already doing great things, but we started that partnership 4 years ago, and to have him win last year was pretty amazing, and to be there again to see him win this year was, you know, it's like, who wins back-to-back? And,
Right.
you know, this guy loves milk. So, yeah, it's pretty fun, and still in our partnership this year.
You know, a couple of years ago, I pitched to them when I started getting in shape, Jimmy. I pitched to them, you know, milk does a body good, right?
Yeah.
And I pitched to them the idea of being kind of a spokesperson just simply because good body and then does a body good, natural tie-in, right?
Yeah.
Put on a couple pounds, and they said no.
But you could maybe have a new ad campaign with your ability dishing out the milkshakes that would perhaps
That is
go just
true.
as well.
I'm telling you, the body of the milkshakes that I make is unbelievable. Dairy Bar hours are when, and it runs through, obviously, the entire fair, right?
9 a.m. to 9 p.m.
Now, you said that as if you've been here for all of those hours.
Yes.
As soon as I asked you the hours, you did like a deep, deep sigh, right? Okay, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m., right?
Yes, until August 18th. Closed on Mondays, as is the rest of the fair.
But every other day, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. 12 hours of dairy fun, right? And again, blue ribbon blueberries,
Delightful.
The-
A+, 2 thumbs up.
Great.
messy melt,
Melty mess.
melty mess grilled cheese, sorry.
That was a copyright thing.
That's right. Hot honey, right?
Hot honey pepperoni pole.
That right there sounds pretty impressive.
Yep.
And then in terms of the standard grilled cheese, obviously American, they're Swiss.
Swiss on rye, American on white, Colby on wheat, pepper jack on sourdough, and I think that is
Now,
it.
you said it took one day for the focus group to come together. Can you not leave until you have the menu memorized? Is that
right.
the deal to be able to
That's
get out of there?
right.
Okay.
Yeah, so Prairie Farms is who we work with to create a new milkshake flavor every year. They're actually also the ice cream provider. But so they come down with we pitch a few ideas.
Sure.
They bring some mystery flavors, and we really do sit in a room and we try milkshakes and grilled cheese until we kind of have a unanimous vote.
Were you guys able to dodge the whole dill craze, or is there
Yeah.
because it's been everywhere.
It is. Somebody said there's even a dill Dr. Pepper, which I didn't know. I know.
I don't know if you know this or not, pickle juice good if you have leg cramps.
I didn't.
Along with mustard, just so you know. And I would like for you to know, because Brooke, obviously you guys have been very good to me and to us at the Dairy Association. So we've got a relationship that goes back a few years. And just as a sign of my maturity, you mentioned that the dairy cows arrive when?
Tomorrow.
And I said nothing about them moving in. See?
Growth.
That is a sign.
That's growth.
It is growth, right?
Yes.
For like 10 years in a row, I would have gone with that. But this is the new me, right? I'm like Peter Brady or Jan Brady. I'm the new Jan Brady right here, the new Jake Query. Brooke, it's a pleasure as always. Thank you so much for the Swiss cheese grilled cheese.
And thank you for the milkshake.
Well, you're so welcome. We'll bring you some more food, too. Come and see us. 10 windows open.
10 windows open from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. at the Dairy Bar, which is admittedly shaped like a barn, but is a bar. That confirmation from Brooke Williams, the Director of Communications from the American Dairy Association of Indiana. Brooke, appreciate it.
And if you need more information, winnersdrinkmilk.com.
Oh, look, it's probably right here on my wristband.
It is indeed.
What's it say right there?
Hashtag winnersdrinkmilk, winnersdrinkmilk.com.
Come on now. I'm a big fan, Brooke, appreciate it. Jimmy, here's the thing. Maybe we need to get Josh Downs some milkshakes. Faster recovery from the high ankle sprain, right?
I'm down for anything at this point. I'm sure he is too.
Well, that's his last name.
Indeed.
Naturally, he is.
Yep.
But when you look at that situation, and no new information today, folks, by the way, on the injury of Josh Downs. Yesterday happened at Colts camp. It's been the big theme and the big story for Colts camp, happening out at Grands Park in Westfield. You know by now it was not malicious, but it probably was one that could have been more cautious, certainly. But having said all of that, the 4 to 6 week window, Jimmy, I subscribe more to the camp of there's no sense in rushing that. I know that for Anthony Richardson, and you'd like to have as many weapons out there, and Downs is an important player for Richardson because he's kind of a safety net type player. He's a plays breaking down bailout type guy, and you like that. But that now perhaps causes somebody else to have to kind of assume that role, and maybe even for Anthony Richardson to become comfortable with somebody else in terms of his safety net, be it the tight end. Maybe it's Jelani Woods. Maybe it's Morale Cox. Maybe it's Alec Pierce that doesn't necessarily go with the long ball as much, or A.D. Mitchell, whatever it might be. But that gives you the afford of luxury of versatility once Downs gets back into the mold. And I kind of like the fact that it forces them baptism by fire to see what else is out there.
I like that, especially on the front of A.D. Mitchell. You would think there'd be an increase in snap count to some capacity for him if Josh Downs is forced to miss time. Jake, I'm looking glass half empty at the Josh Downs injury. I think it's better to set your mindset that way because these injuries of the high ankle variety can be so tricky.
You mean in terms of the time frame?
Yeah, they say 4 to 6 weeks. I'm fully expecting him to miss week 1. Like that, at minimum, I would assume he's not going to be ready in a month's time, which is about the time that week 1 will arrive. Again, that's not me reporting that. That's just what my gut says will happen with him as he misses week 1. To the point you outlined, there's no reason to rush him. My bigger issue with all of this is that outside of Michael Pittman Jr., who would be any quarterback safety net because of how gifted he is as a wide receiver, what we saw in the short span of time with Anthony Richardson at the helm last year was a relationship between two rookies, Josh Downs and Anthony Richardson, and him becoming a favorite target. And when you eliminate a target off the board like Josh Downs, who can do so many things at a versatile rate, you run the risk of Richardson pressing in situations or trying to force things when he already, the human element of it all, wants to make an impact as quick as he can because he lost basically a whole season last year. I'm just worried that what winds up happening here is a snowball effect where either one of two things happens. Either he starts pressing and it leads to more, not the kind of good errors we like where he's learning from them, but unforced errors that lead to frustration. Or, like Bob Kravitz had mentioned earlier, and that podcast will be up wherever you get your podcast and on the Podcast Center, maybe they become a run-first team. And I think that, yes, Anthony Richardson, what makes him a unicorn undoubtedly is his ability to run, but it's him being a dual-threat quarterback. Yes, the thing that draws people to Lamar Jackson is his legs, but he can throw the ball pretty well too. And if they become in a year that has to be transformative and an educational year for Richardson, yes, you want wins, but he needs real growth. The answer to Josh Downs going down can't be, well, we're going to run the ball more now. That's eliminating growth from him as a passer. We know what he is as a runner. No one's worried about Anthony Richardson being able to be a runner other than his health.
Bingo. What you just said there at the end is the important part, the health, right? Because the more often it is, what fascinates me is we have transformed in this market from going from a fan base and an organization that was bringing in players and coaches from the baseball team in town to teach the quarterback how to slide.
What a time.
To now being a franchise and a fan base that is wanting their quarterback to stay upright, lower his shoulder, and run. Yeah. And I know that's a little bit extreme of what I'm saying. There's hyperbole there. But the narrative that we were given 10 years ago with Andrew Luck was he doesn't need to run, and we shouldn't have him running even though he's athletic and big enough to do so, because holy cow, look at his ability and his touch. And with Anthony Richardson, it's, hey, we really want this guy to run, and I know it's a different a different coach, different regime, but are they saying that about Anthony Richardson because in reality they're actually worried about his touch?
That very well could be, and there's so much scar tissue, as you've mentioned, the last decade plus, dating back to Andrew Luck. Eddie brings up an interesting point. I know it's not as easy to have him engage in the conversations as he's back inside the DriveHuber.com studios. But, Jake, my answer to the following is no. I want your thoughts on it. Eddie brought up the point of, does the fact the Colts play the Texans week 1, combined with it being a divisional opponent, their known struggles in week 1 for the last decade, does it have any decision on trying to push Josh Downs back quicker? My answer is no. I get it. People are upset about the week 1 struggles, and you want to start a win. That should have no bearing whatsoever. The only bearing on Josh Downs should be, is he as close to 100% as he can be without real risk of re-injury?
I think there's an element there that is overridingly present in factoring that answer, which is a very good question, or coming up with an answer for a very good question. And I'll tell you what that element is when we return to the Indiana State Fair in front of the Dairy Bar with the American Dairy Association of Indiana. Matt Taylor, voice of the Colts, coming up top of the hour. You're listening to The Fan. Way, my musical buddy Marcus is here, who I met, when was that, Marcus? In the spring or last summer when we were at the Ruins seeing Big Head Todd and the Monsters along with Blues Traveler. And he is wearing his Indianapolis Motor Speedway shirt, which will be perfectly fitting tomorrow here at the Dairy Bar because Doug Bowles will be here from 12 until 1. Felix Rosenquist will be here from 1 until 2 o'clock. And you buy a milk tomorrow at the Dairy Bar, it is going to come in a commemorative Indianapolis Motor Speedway bottle.
Oh, wow. How about that?
Because winners drink milk at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, right? Jimmy, we were just talking about you were saying, does the fact that they take on the Houston Texans in week number 1, and it's a divisional game, and
all that week 1 scar tissue.
Yeah, I mean, the Colts are moving towards Chicago White Sox territory in terms of opening week losing streaks. They've lost, 9 straight years? I mean, I can't remember the number of years they've lost an opening week. And you were saying, does that factor into trying to accelerate a return for Josh Downs?
Yeah, I said no, and then I wanted to know your perspective.
Okay.
If maybe I'm missing something to that there. I would think you let him recover.
One of my catchphrase answers on things.
Mm-hmm.
But I've become a big believer in it. I think that deep down, one of the biggest things for teams, organizations, coaches, athletes, all of them, to overcome is the overriding sentiment of just the element of human nature. And you can say out loud until the cows come home that you don't factor in who the opponent is on whether or not a guy comes back. You can say till the cows come home that, well, if it's must win, my favorite was Marvin Harrison. He misses like the last 11 games of his career, and every week they say, well, if it was a must-win game, he'd be out there. It's the NFL. Every game's a must-win game, right?
Yep.
This is not Major League Baseball where they've expanded the playoffs, or this is not the NCAA tournament where now they're going to let everybody in. I mean, it's the NFL. Every week is must-win. And so you can say all of those things, but in reality, one of the things that you cannot overlook and cannot oversell is the aspect of the human nature element of thinking about and having in your mind the things that have hurt you in the past. And in the Colts standpoint, one of the things that has hurt them in the past is slow starts, slow opening season starts, and slow starts in terms of within the – now, they usually have – obviously, they fare very well in terms of their division. For a long time, they fed off of the division, right? They got fat. The Colts got fat for years on a division that had essentially not one but then eventually 2 expansion franchises. Yeah. But you have to be able to get out of the box the right way. And they look back. There is no denying that they have to look back and say, man, we've had – look at last year. The end of the year, it comes down to it, a quarter away from the postseason. You think they don't think about what happened in week 1?
Sure.
In games that they should have had back? So my answer for you, Jimmy, while hedging it a little bit, is that they can tell me, and they can even themselves convince themselves that those are not things that they factor in. That it is a vacuum, and we have a formula on whether or not a guy comes back. But the one thing that you cannot ever completely rule out is back-of-mind human element. And it has to be in the back of their mind. There's no doubt it has to be in the back of their mind.
I don't disagree with that. I mean, to think about those type of complications from history and what it might mean in your pursuit of a division title, let alone a playoff berth this year, is fair. But you have to be able to see the big picture, long game of what this season could be for the Colts, which is Anthony Richardson joining the ranks of the elite of the sport like C.J. Stroud had last year. And I want to make that transition, that development of Anthony Richardson, as beneficial as possible. And you remove Josh Downs from that equation unless A.D. Mitchell is able to be a standout rookie of all standout rookies. That wide receiver room, when I look at it, doesn't look that much different than the questions we had a year ago if you remove Josh Downs from it in any capacity. And you might say to yourself, well, Jimmy, it's only 4 to 6 weeks. Well, that's fine. But if you happen to let the human element get the best of you and you rush him back, which I don't think they do, but you rush him back on the short end of that just because you're worried about a bad start to the season, that could derail the whole season more than any loss could if he gets re-injured or if something else happens in that regard. So I get what you're saying, and I agree with you. To think about that stuff is to be human, but just like Nick Cross needed to be smarter at camp the other day, the Colts need to be smarter about that aspect of it when mapping out when Josh Downs should return.
You know who we didn't talk a lot about this time a year ago? I mean, a little bit, but not near as much. We talked about Josh Downs.
Yeah.
I think people knew going through camp, like, wow, this guy. I think Reggie Wayne is the one that really was sold on Josh Downs, kind of sold the Colts on Josh Downs, and then during the course of camp, they were very effusive in letting people know that Josh Downs seemingly caught everything going their way. But we've talked more about A.D. Mitchell and heard more about A.D. Mitchell this year than we did Josh Downs a year ago.
For sure.
I mean, everywhere you turn, A.D. Mitchell, it's kind of like here, like a lemon shake-up stand. Everywhere you turn, right, lemon shake-up. Same thing. Everywhere you turn at Colts camp, A.D. Mitchell, A.D. Mitchell, A.D. Mitchell. Now,
do you think that's because of the player he's potentially replacing? Because there's been so much hunger for Alec Pierce to do more?
Yes.
That's why
excellent point, yes.
You're propping up Mitchell a bit more than we did Downs a year ago?
Yes. I mean, look, when we got done, when we were at Colts camp, and we had Shane Steichen on, and it was fun. That was on Monday, right?
Yep.
And I kind of wish that a lot of people will ask me, and I'm sure they do you as well, Jimmy. You're out in public and you're talking to somebody, and they find out what you do for a living, and they want to know what guys are like, what's so-and-so like, what's so-and-so like. And more often than not, you say, look, I mean, what you hear of our interactions that's pretty much the interactions.
Yeah.
And I've always said, we don't totally know guys, right? But you do get conversations, interactions, body language that you can tell, especially if you've been around it long enough, when you're talking to guys on whether or not they're a used car salesman or whether or not they believe in what they're telling you.
Yeah.
Some guys will tell you, oh, you know what, that guy, he comes in, he brings his lunch pill every day, and we really expect big things from him this year. And you can look at it as he's talking to you. You can look at the guy and go, this guy's full of crap. He has no belief in this player he's talking about. And then there's other times where you talk to a coach, and they'll tell you about a player, and they light up, and they get super excited, like, you know what, I'm glad you asked about that. And, for example, Jimmy, tell me something that you have an interest in, a hobby that you have, that you don't talk a lot about either on the radio or to your friends or whatever else. But when you meet somebody, if you get on an airplane and you sit down next to somebody and they're reading an article about an area that you have an interest, you light up a little bit because you're like, wow, not many people know about that, but here's something where I can have a conversation with them, and that's a fun outlet for me. Give me one.
Well, this one I think is too broad, but maybe there's like a sector of the movie world that I'm really appreciative of. Like maybe it's dramas or thrillers, or maybe it's the superhero side of things. I'm not talking about that on the sports radio world, but,
right.
you know.
So you sit down next to somebody on a plane, and they say, hey, just out of curiosity, do you like superhero movies? And you're like, oh, my gosh.
Yeah.
And you light up more than if they're like, hey, so how many frequent flyer miles do you have? When we were talking to Shane Steichen.
I feel like I'm experiencing flying with you, by the way.
Oh, listen, I'm a wonderful flyer. I'm very efficient. I have the TSA pre-approved. But I will tell you this. I had a streak for a long time there. 38 consecutive flights. Some jackass in my road took their shoes off.
Oh, that's right. That finally snapped? It's over?
The streak was over very briefly, and then, but it is absolutely insanity the way people come on these planes now and treat it like their own human petri dish. But nonetheless, I'm an excellent guest. If you're in the middle seat, I let you have both armrests. I'm very courteous about that. I usually will bring a plug that has two different USB ports in case the person next to me needs to plug in. I'm
the gentleman right there.
I'm very thoughtful. But we talked to Shane Steichen for 19 and a half minutes on Monday. We asked him about a number of different topics. We asked him about the safety. We asked him about the tight end. We asked him about the receiver room. We asked him about Anthony Richardson. We went over all, we dotted all the I's, crossed all the T's. And he talked about A.D. Mitchell. And then we got off the air. And when we got off the air, he stood up. And it was interesting to me because I fully assumed, because this is how I'm usually used to it when I talk to people, that he was going to immediately scram once he was obligated to not talk to me anymore. But he stood up. And we took up the headset, and I'm like, hey, thanks for joining us or whatever. And he wanted to continue the conversation about A.D. Mitchell.
Yeah.
And he's like, no, you don't understand. And he used the term, and I don't think this is when he was on the air, but I know he used it again off the air. He used the term Allen Iverson.
He did.
And he said, man, no, you don't understand. He's got this little twitch about him. And he did the thing where he put your hand in front of you, and you like jazz your shoulders back and forth to show like the quickness of somebody. Mm-hmm. And he said, no. His route running is because I said, well, what kind of route runner is he? and his eyes got really big, and he said, oh, man, like not only is he a route runner, but I'm telling you, like once he gets to the break, he has like this Allen Iverson twitch, and he lit up the most enthusiastic, and it's unfortunate, and maybe it's a knock on our ability to interview, but the
could be the media element too. You know,
yeah,
guys are more comfortable with headsets off, right?
I mean, I'm telling you, he lit up.
Yeah.
Once we were off the air and talking about A.D. Mitchell, far, far, far more than he did any other thing that we talked about over the course of the interview. And that has to say something. Now, you got to put that on the field.
Yeah.
And you got to do that in, like, the regular season. They're two totally different things. I mean, literally, it is apples to oranges. There's a difference between – I took summer school math at North Central because it was remedial. It was a lot slower. There were only like 10 other kids in there that, like me, were complete slacks. We learned – you took algebra in school, and in the summer you took alge because it's a little bit slower and you don't have time to say algebra all the way over because then the summer's over with. I had to take that in the summertime.
They don't want to hurt you either.
Summer school algebra was totally different than first semester algebra.
Sure.
And that's what the NFL's like. Summer school NFL is totally different than the real deal. So we got to translate it here still, right?
Yeah.
He's really good at the Pythagorean theorem, but is he really good once you start getting into calculus? We don't know that yet. But the early signs are good. And I'm talking about A.D. Mitchell, not Josh Downs.
And I don't want to get, too close to drinking too much Colts Kool-Aid per se, but I've always felt like, and this is not a hot take, this is a belief around many in this market, around many around the National Football League, that Shane Steichen is a gifted offensive mind, that he is a good play designer, a play caller. And so when you see him, especially if you have exotic play concepts, route running being so critical to that, when you see him light up about a trait in his wideout, his rookie wideout, that and A.D. Mitchell, about his ability to get separation or just to fake guys out and freeze them on routes, that makes me think that, Jake, you're going to get to see that this year. Maybe it won't be as large of a snap count as we might want. Maybe it really is going to be, like he alluded to, situational football where him and Pierce are splitting time. Granted, all of that was before Josh Downs winds up being unavailable for the next 4 to 6 weeks with that high ankle sprain. But when a coach that is presented as being a gifted offensive mind lights up about such a nuanced aspect of being a wide receiver that sometimes gets overlooked but can be the difference between a 5-yard catch versus a 20-yard catch, that should get Colts fans excited about what A.D. Mitchell can do. But I'm with you, it's still summer algebra right now. We've yet to hit the real textbooks of week 1 of an NFL season.
Brooke brought you one of the new grilled cheeses. Now, didn't you say that you were supposed to get one that had, was it the Munster?
I wanted the Havarti, which is what's in
right
there.
She brought it out.
No, you might have a little magic act here. I already devoured the grilled cheese she gave me. That one is the hot honey pepperoni. Okay,
now, Marcus, you want to try the hot honey pepperoni for us? No, come on now. Marcus is waiting till tomorrow, apparently, to get his Indianapolis Motor Speedway bottle of milk. How was the one that you had?
Delightful. It's very good.
That was quick.
The mix of cheese.
You inhaled it, right?
I did. I took it down. No shame there. It was wonderful.
You vaped it, literally.
It's gone. It's all gone.
I've never seen anything like that.
It's gone.
That was impressive. Now, a couple of ladies here enjoying. Is that a chocolate shake? Chocolate shakes are fabulous. October 12th, she called in. Now, hang on just a second. Ma'am, go ahead and throw on the headsets there. Well, since if you've called the fact that you knew my first name shows that you've already passed the test. Okay, so go ahead.
Yeah, so I called in. Jimmy and I were talking about wedding bands.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
It was my anniversary. You said Karen's your mom's
That's
name.
correct, yeah.
Yeah.
So now wait a minute. If I'm not mistaken, and your name is Karen, right?
Mm-hmm.
See the memory there? Okay, so Karen, on October 12th you called in because I was probably taking a survey with Jimmy as to whether or not it was acceptable that Jimmy wears his Kansas City Chiefs ring in place of his wedding band.
I was hoping we could wait till opening night before this conversation popped up
Karen,
again. But
you
here we are.
called in, right?
I did.
And so is your anniversary on the 12th?
On October 12th.
October 12th, and you've been married for how long? If you
I
don't
will
mind me
be
asking?
38 years.
38
Congratulations.
years? Okay.
Yeah.
So you got married at the age of 4, which is impressive, right? Okay, now, I don't remember which way you voted, so I'm not trying to lead the witness here, and I have a feeling that actually you sided against me here, but what was your opinion of Jimmy wearing a Chiefs ring instead of his wedding band on Sundays?
Well, I have to qualify because I'm older, so I sided with the fact that you would always wear the original, where Jimmy's generation would side with.
Okay. Now,
big-
Karen, here's the thing.
It's all right.
We're simply more traditional.
I also don't want to
Right.
bring my
We
whole
just said that.
generation
We're
down a
more
peg. That might just
traditional.
be a me thing. I don't know if
I
mean, I'm
think
still.
absolutely.
Now, Karen, did you grow up in the Indianapolis area?
No,
Where did you grow up?
Shelby County.
Shelby County. Okay, so did you go to Shelbyville High School?
No, Waldron.
Okay.
Very
Ooh,
small
yeah,
school.
Waldron. Ralph Lux was the student manager extraordinaire at Waldron for many, many years.
Mm-hmm.
They were state champions. Jason Delaney, who is now at Cathedral, led them to the state championship.
Right.
They had a couple of twins that were really good. Was Shelbyville
Barnard twins.
The Barnard twins? That's right. What was Shelbyville your big rival?
No, because we weren't in the same conference.
Okay, and that milkshake that you're enjoying there, does it remind you of Compton's Cow Palace right there in Shelbyville?
Absolutely.
Yeah, there we go.
Good
See?
pull.
Absolutely.
Nice job.
Karen, I'm telling you, Shelbyville's my roots. You know that, right? I love Shelbyville. And now how long you been at the fair today? Did you just get here?
Just got here.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the first thing you
But
did
I
was,
heard you on the way, and I heard you guys were over here, so I'm like, I got to go say hi to the guys.
well, that
Well,
you know
thank
what,
you very much.
Yeah.
Karen, you are a female listener, and you.
And I listen all the time.
Well,
from 7 a.m. off
listen,
and on when I'm going to work.
It is
So-
very much appreciated, and I've always said you I believe were female listener number 6, but now 6 of 14. We have 14 female listeners.
The growth
but,
is crazy.
But again, since
Yeah.
in October we only had 6 of them, right?
Yep.
And I watch on YouTube too when I'm off on my days off. Sometimes.
Oh, now see, now just so you know, 3 days out of the month I put in hair product just for that. Just so you know, right? Just for that reason. Half the time I forget we're on YouTube, so I
Yeah.
appreciate the fact
Yeah.
that you do it. Would you like a title within the company? You know, Query and Company is the show. We give everybody a designated title within the company. What line of work have you been in your career?
I am a nurse.
You're a nurse. Okay, so would you like to be the director of nursing?
Sure, absolutely. I'm
Director of
still
nursing.
working, but yeah, that's all right.
Do you draw blood?
No, I'm a case manager, so
Okay.
I'm away from the bedside, but I still work in a hospital.
Boy, I'll tell you what. Yeah, that's smart. I couldn't do that. The second I see the blood, out of there, right?
Yeah.
I cannot do that. All right, well, Karen, we very much appreciate it.
Yeah.
We will give you gosh, you've got now, just so you know, 2 months and 5 days to prepare for your anniversary. So make sure you get a proper gift, right?
Absolutely.
Including maybe a Colts ring for your husband to wear. on Sunday.
Exactly.
Not quite.
I just had to come and tease you guys.
Well, we
all right. I
appreciate
appreciate
it.
that
We
very
very
much.
much appreciate it. We're happy when people recognize us and we don't owe them money, so that's
Yeah.
good.
So-
All right, Matt Taylor, voice of the Colts, going to join us. Going to do so top of the hour, about 12 minutes from now. We are at the Indiana State Fair. We are just in front of the Dairy Bar. You are listening to Query and Company on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan, and a guy's walking this way in a bucket hat that Jimmy might steal. We'll explain later. We are back at the Indiana State Fair, the Dairy Bar, just in front of it. As a matter of fact, would love for you to come by and say hi if you are on your way to the State Fair. If you are curious about what has happened in the Olympics, we're about to tell you who, if the United States is able to dispatch of Serbia in basketball, they will face for the gold medal. That team is going to be France, who has dispatched of Germany. Germany was one that many people thought was perhaps playing the best of anybody not named USA in these games. France, though, between Rudy Gobert and Victor Wembanyama, obviously pretty formidable punch down low, and then they've got some outside shooters as well. So it will not be an easy task towards gold, but you want to play the best, and France and Germany probably. I mean, Team USA is the favorite, clearly, but those two pretty
I'm telling
solid.
you, though, don't sell short the idea of, I mean, I know these are NBA players, so they've played in front of crazier crowds than this, but the French support group there invading that semifinal was as strong as anything you're going to see. I think it's going to be an electric atmosphere, and from neutral, of course, we want to see Team USA win, but if you're neutral of the game, it's going to be quite a spectacle for the final, should it be France versus USA.
Going to be fun to watch, though. And, Serbia, it seems to me, I made this joke to Eddie earlier, but have they played them 9 times now? Feels that way, right? The United States?
It does. This will be matchup number 3. And Steve Kerr brought up the idea of, and I get it, he's trying to caution his group, but maybe they're playing possum. Like, he doesn't expect them to easily dispatch Nikola Jokic and the rest of the Serbian national team the way they did in their most recent meeting in group play. They're a dangerous team. They were down big against Australia, able to rally back and win that. You can't sleep lightly on them, but I still feel the same way I did, Jake. This is the team once again destined for gold in Team USA. I think they're moving on to face France.
Eddie Garrison, we have tickets to give away. Is that correct?
Yes, that is right. We have tickets for the Kevin Hart show that is coming to the Old National Center on November 17th.
Okay, so we will give away the tickets now. Eddie, what number caller would you like to go with?
Let's go with caller 3.
Caller number 3 at 239-1070. Get through, and Eddie Garrison will get your information. We will get you on the way to see Kevin Hart, Old National Center, that midway through the month of November. We are 2/3 the way through our show here in front of the Dairy Bar at the Indiana State Fair, and that means the 2 o'clock hour is upon us, and that means Matt Tayloy, the voice of the Colts, will join us, and he will do it next. We are at the Indiana State Fair in front of the Dairy Bar. Jake Query along with Jimmy Cook. And we will be here for another hour. Matt Taylor is the voice of the Colts. He will be on the call for the Colts' first preseason game this weekend, along with Joe Wrights, and he joins us now on the Xfinity Tire and I just completely, the Xfinity Tire Auto and Tire Express line. I just completely screwed that up. Go ahead, Eddie, give it to me.
The Express Pro Tire and Auto
Express. I don't know why I said Xfinity. Too much grilled cheese here. My apologies to Express Pro Tire and Auto guest line. Matt Taylor joins us, and I'm sure thrilled to be doing so with that smooth segue. The voice of the Colts. Matt, let's get right to this in terms of yesterday's news with Josh Downs. You know, it looks like now 4 to 6 weeks. We don't really know. I look at it as this could be blessing in disguise, and I'm not trying to be overly optimistic there, but the reality is of the fact that it might mean, a guy like A.D. Mitchell now gets a little bit more reps. That familiarity comes. Then Downs comes back into the equation, and now you've got even more riches to go along with it. But who is the guy, or who are the guys that will get more reps now as Josh Downs nurses that high ankle sprain?
No, great question. By the way, you just sounded like me in the fourth quarter of a preseason game. You're like, who is this guy again? Like, how do you pronounce this guy's
Well, here's
name?
the thing. I mean, I say it 100 times a day, right? And I'm certainly thrilled with Express Pro Tire and Auto. I mean, I truly apologize to Express Pro Tire and Auto because I don't know why I kept thinking Xfinity. I have no idea where that came from.
No.
Yes.
Again, that's where I'm going to be at the fourth quarter on Sunday. Just double checking, triple checking who's in the game. Make sure you get it right. No, but to answer your question, I guess it is a little bit of silver linings playbook in that it's going to be more run for Anthony Gould. It's going to be more run for some other guys that have the versatility to play in the slot, like Ashton Doolin. Maybe more guys that can get some more reps just across the board with one less guy with the first-team offense. What does it do for, like you said, Adonai Mitchell's snap count, Alec Pierce's snap count? But further on down the roster, you got guys like DJ Montgomery, who's always been an intriguing player, picked up last year about this time of year in the preseason, showed up in some big moments a season ago against Pittsburgh when the roster got kind of pinched for bodies. I think that was when Michael Pittman Jr. went down towards the end of last season or had that concussion issue. And then you got guys like, Jawan Winfrey, Ethan Fernie has got some ability to play in the slot as well. So it's always next man up. But, I guess the most unfortunate thing for Josh Downs is that, I talked to him early on in camp after one of the first couple of days of practices. I asked him after a practice, I said, what are you most looking forward to about your second year in the NFL after, what you were able to do last season and complement your rookie season, which went so well? He had over 700 receiving yards, almost 70 catches. And his answer was, staying healthy. Like, I'm excited to be healthy because last year, he dealt with a nagging knee injury for most of the season. It's kind of something that deceptively carried over from his college days at North Carolina and was able to kind of manage it and maintain it the first couple of weeks of the season, about the halfway point of the season. But right around Germany, when he got banged up going into that game against the Patriots, that's when it became a little bit more, problematic for him to be able to get available to play every Sunday. So he was looking forward to just his second season with no nagging issues, and now you've got this on top of it. And so hopefully it's nothing major. Reporting a report on that it was a high ankle sprain. I don't think the Colts have really released anything or have said what it is, but a report out there says it's a high ankle, which would be a couple of weeks. And given the fact the Colts don't play a meaningful regular season game until September 8th, you got about a month to manage it and see where he's at. So hopefully it's not a long-term thing, a nagging thing this year like his knee was last year. But it was really looking forward to him just playing healthy and free. And so hopefully this is a speedy recovery for him because obviously it goes without saying he's a big, major focal point of this offense.
Matt, I got to thinking about this, and I'm going to take the position running back off the board because I think that's probably the obvious answer here. But in your experience, and I don't mean in terms of the Colts roster, but in your experience, the position in the National Football League where you get the least deviation of skill set from, say, number one guy to number 5 guy on the depth chart. The tightest area in terms of a position is which one, where you get what I'm saying, where you have the least drop-off typically from the starter to a guy where you got to go deeper down the set?
That's a great question. As you're saying that, my mind is going to running back, just because there's the great ones, and I don't mean to be disparaging at all, but if you look at most NFL running back situations, it's by committee outside of a handful of instances, right? Tennessee in the as previously as recent as last year with Derrick Henry. Last year and years before with the Giants and Saquon Barkley, Jonathan Taylor here with the Colts. But most setups are by committee, where it's kind of rare in the NFL these day and age, where a guy's going to get 20, 25 carries per game, week in, week out, every Sunday. So, again, I'm not trying to say like running backs are dime a dozen, but perhaps that ideology is why in recent past, the running back position has been, quote unquote, devalued, and why GMs are looking at that as a position where we can just get guys on rookie contracts and we can get what we need out of the running game and not have to pay that position a boatload of money, comparatively speaking, to, wide receiver or left tackles or defensive ends or shutdown corners, where I do think there is a bigger cliff or a drop-off between a starter, an elite player, and then a number 2 that has to come in and step up and try to close that gap. So it's probably running back. But that being said, like on this team with the Colts, again, Trey Sermon I think is a good back. Zach Moss was a fantastic back last year, backing up Jonathan Taylor. But the Jonathan Taylors of the world and the Derrick Henrys and the Christian McCaffreys and the Saquon Barkleys, those are the true special players at that position.
Voice of the Colts, Matt Taylor, is our guest. He joins us on the Express Pro Tire and Auto guest line. He's brought to you as well by Shelley Materials, the concrete and aggregate experts. Matt, I realize this is somewhat of a difficult question with us having an unknown of when exactly Josh Downs will return, outside of the fact that it's a 4 to 6 week prognosis generally for high ankle sprains. Let's just say, for the sake of argument, though, he has to miss at least week 1. My biggest worry in reaction to this is that Anthony Richardson, coming off a season where he only played 4 games, where he's still an unproven quarterback, where the expectations are sky high for him, might be forced into situations where he's pressing more than he should, or he is feeling like he needs to force the issue more than he should when he's losing a top quality target like Josh Downs. Irrational or rational, that line of thinking, and why maybe will it not be as big of a deal for him as I worry it could be, again, if Josh Downs has to miss time?
Well, I think the playmaking arsenal is certainly stronger this year than it was last year. And I think inherently the Colts are just going to be more dynamic with Anthony Richardson at quarterback, whether whether Josh Downs is on the field or he's not. And again, Anthony Gould, I think, he's a good enough player to step in and get quality reps with the first team offense and be able to give you production from that position. He is, kind of the same size and stature as Josh Downs. I mean, they're not the same player, don't get me wrong, but he's quick, he's shifty, knows how to get open. I think the biggest thing you would miss about Josh Downs, and again, this is not to disparage anybody else, but more of a compliment to Downs, is he's just a really instinctual, high football IQ player, even in his second year. I mean, he's got NFL bloodlines. His dad, his uncle, Dre Bly, they really did a nice job of getting him prepared for what it means to be a professional football or football player, I should say, and what it means to go about your business in the NFL. So I think that would be the biggest thing that they would miss by not having Josh Downs, is just a guy that's kind of wiser beyond his years, but has the youth and the great skill set that he possesses. But again, I think no disrespect to Gardner Minshew, but towards the end of last year, the Colts offense was tough to move the ball down the field. I think with Richardson coming back, And you got Mitchell on the outside. You got Pittman on the outside. And I think Pierce's skill set will be accentuated more. I think you're going to be okay. But, again, I'm not trying to downplay the loss of Josh Downs. Jimmy, I'm just not – if he hypothetically has to miss a game to start the season, situation, right, I don't think you're sounding the alarm bells just yet because I do think the skill players around Anthony Richardson minus Josh Downs are still pretty strong.
Matt, I asked a question. Matt Taylor is our guest, the voice of the Colts. Asked a question on the show this week that I was so proud of that I'm going to recycle the question and ask you the same one. You ready? And I know that shocks you that I would be so proud of something that I would recycle it. But when I was explaining that when I call the Indy 500, I keep a notepad where I write down like the top 8 periodically every 15 or 20 laps so I can just kind of keep an eye on what's going on. And the year that Marcus Ericsson won the Indy 500, not a lot of people talked about him going into the race, but when I went back and looked at my flip notebook, I'm like, man, Marcus Ericsson he's on every single page because he was in the top 8 every single time I wrote him down. Who is the guy that in November you're going to call his name making a big play or having a key moment, and then you're going to say to yourself, you know what? It makes sense because I wrote his name down a lot during camp, even though I didn't anticipate that I would be at the beginning of it.
Oh, man, I love these questions, Jake. I really do. I really do. Man, they are thought-provoking. I mean, again, I know I gave this answer to you to a similar type of a question last week, but I'm a believer in Trey Sermon. I think he's a damn good number 2 running back, even though he hasn't.
And Matt, not to jump in there, but here's what's interesting about that because I wanted you to add on to this. Trey Sermon as the number 2 back, that might be a position that is used more than we expect. Not because of any knock on Jonathan Taylor, but because I could see them, because last year they had success in using kind of that 1-2 punch of unpredictability, even though they might be more of a similar runner than was Moss. But I do think there's a chance he's going to get some reps and they're going to find ways to use him, right?
Well, and again, you just don't want to go off of history, but unfortunately, the last couple of years, Jonathan Taylor has gotten banged up, and that's not a knock on him. That's just the position that he plays, right? Remember last year, I think he missed 6 games or so with that wrist injury, had to have the procedure. And where would the Colts have been without the professionalism of Zach Moss? And I think this year, that guy to slide into that role would be Trey Sermon. And again, just because he's never been, a guy that's been called upon to have 20 carries in a game doesn't mean I don't think he could do it. So to me, he's kind of like always there because he's mixing in with the first team offense when Jonathan Taylor needs a breather, or throughout the course of a game, like in the third quarter, late third quarter, he's in there spelling Taylor for a series just because of the longevity of the game. But I think he's perfectly capable of ripping off a couple of big runs and maximizing the totals that he gets. Or, again, knocking on wood, if Taylor gets banged up, I think Sermon is your 3-down back, then would be backed up by, a guy like either Tyler Goodson or Evan Hull. But, yeah, to go back and look, if we fast forward in November, Jake, and I go back and look at my notes from training camp, I think Sermon would be the Marcus Ericsson that's always kind of the top 10 of deceptively impactful players that I think at some point this season is going to be called upon to make a big play and hopefully win a game for the Colts.
Matt, how much, if at all, has the absence, and perhaps it's too early to tell, but how has the absence of Samson Ebukam been felt to this point, and how far into the season, if it winds up with an increase in snaps for Latu, or maybe there's a situation where Dio Dangbo or Tyquan Lewis or whoever are filling that void, how far into the season would it take for the Samson Ebukam season-ending injury to not be felt, or are we already there?
Well, I think you're already there in the sense that, the Colts needed, just based on their personnel going into the season, where Latu was drafted, I think the Colts needed a big year out of Latu, and, define that however you want to, because it's hard for rookie defensive ends to come in just right away and get 10, 12 sacks. I think in the last 10 years, there's only been 5 rookie defensive ends that have double-digit sacks. So you might have to kind of curb your enthusiasm as far as that goes. But I think his role his role is now accentuated with Ebakam's loss. He might be a guy that's more counted upon on first and second rundowns, and I think he can do that. Whereas going into the season with Ebakam out there healthy, Liatu Latu might have been just a third down, obvious passing down specialist, if you will, out there in the NASCAR package or the IndyCar package with the Colts pass rush. But there's no question that Liatu Latu needs to have a big year for a rookie, and I think the same thing can be said for Adonai Mitchell on the other side of the ball. These two premium picks, right, those two first picks in the draft, with Latu in the first round, Mitchell in the second round, they need to have good rookie seasons in order for the Colts to have success and go where they want to go in 2024 and win a division championship for the first time in 10 years.
I like to think that A.D. Mitchell comes in the IndyCar package, and then like your big blocking extra tight end is your NASCAR package, right? Isn't that fair? Is that fair?
Yeah, that's one way to go about it. Yeah, because it's yin and yang in the secondary, right? Because I think, again, I think why the Colts are so bullish on this young secondary with guys like Jalen Jones and Juju Brents and Dallas Flowers is because they think they have one of the best defensive line units in the NFL, certainly one of the best D-line units the Colts have had in quite some time, where they feel like now finally they can play with 8-9 guys and play in waves and substitute, and no matter who's in the game, there's not going to be a drop-off. So that's why the Ebakam loss matters, because that's one less guy that can play in that wave to help the young secondary along.
I mean, Matt, listen, I know I'm going on the way back here, but the reality is, and this is not a slight towards – I mean, I love Juju Brents because he's big and athletic, right, and he's aggressive. But the reality is that Jason David was able to start in the NFL and start and play well at the corner because he had Robert Mathis and Dwight Freeney get into quarterbacks for him, right? I mean, that makes things a lot easier. Matt Taylor's our guest, the voice of the Colts. By the way, have you seen the TV show? Do you watch Curb Your Enthusiasm, Matt? You use that phrase. Do you watch that show?
I've seen it in the past, yes. I used to have HBO, no longer a subscriber.
I've never seen the show. You strike me as a guy that would be right up your sense of humor. I've never seen it, but I've heard it's great. I mean, I like Seinfeld, so kind of six and one half dozen the other. Look, the elephant in the room when it comes to this team, Matt, is the fact that, and we do this. As fans and as media, we do this. We pick an area that we are going to obsess over, and then everybody is like, why are they not doing something? Why are they not doing something? It becomes like this brush fire. And for the Colts this year right now, it is the safety position. I love Julian Blackmon. They move position. It's one that you can kind of never have too many because of attrition. I don't expect you to speak for Chris Ballard here. I wouldn't put you in that position. But I am curious, do you think there is the possibility that part of why we haven't seen the Colts necessarily talk about or address that position is because we still have a wave to go through of good players that are going to be available from camps elsewhere, and you can't rule out that possibility of exploration?
No, that's a great point. I definitely think that's part of it. And I also think the second part of it is, and I know we kind of get guilty of reacting to everything that happens every day in camp. And I know you look at the calendar of camp, and there's only 3 more practices left of the Grand Park portion of training camp. But camp goes all the way until the end of the month, right? So you have 3 joint practices plus 3 preseason games. So I think it would be premature to pull the plug on wanting to see what you have from the young guys like Rodney Thomas and Nick Cross, and also see where Ronnie Harrison's best fit is with Julian Blackmon in the back end, whether that's Harrison playing free safety or Blackmon playing free safety, or vice versa when you switch those guys. But you want to see how. I mean, if you thought to yourself, we're gonna trust that somebody's going to rise to the occasion, the cream is going to rise to the crop here towards the end or by the end of the preseason. Well, you're only at the halfway point, and the most important parts of training camp have yet to occur. Right, the juiciest parts and those joint practices are going to tell you, I think, way more than tomorrow's practice with the Colts. It's only an hour practice, and it's practice 10, and everybody knows everybody else, offense versus defense, and all of those periods. So let's see how it looks against the Cardinals in joint practices. Let's see what each guy can do in 3 preseason games and then make a decision, because some guys are still out there in free agency if you need to go that route. And to your point, that waiver wire is going to be awfully enticing if you think you need it at the end of training camp.
You mentioned the 3 preseason games. Matt Tayloy is our guest, voice of the Colts, brought to you by Shelly Materials, the concrete and aggregate experts, and he joins us on the Express Pro Tire and Auto guest line. You'll obviously be on the call throughout the season, throughout the preseason, and that first game against the Broncos this Sunday at 1 o'clock. Mayte, it's always vague from coaching staffs, especially so with Shane Steichen, what the mindset's going to be from a starter standpoint. So let's take them off the board. Where are areas of this second and third unit and guys fighting for roster spots that you'll most be focused on in game 1 on Sunday of the preseason?
Yeah, great question. You know, I want to see what some of the guys that are trying to fill in positions of depth can do, like Jalen Carlisle. I know he's banged up a little bit, hasn't practiced the last couple of days. Hopefully he can get out there on Sunday and show what he can do and, you know, continue to develop as that guy that's making a transition from safety to linebacker in the NFL, because I think right now he's got a good shot to be a good depth piece and obviously play on special teams. Also want to pick up there, I want to see what the Colts do initially in game planning for the kickoffs and kickoff returns. How do they tactically, you know, go about it? What's it going to look like? So really intrigued as far as that goes. And then another thing that I'm really anticipating is hopefully one of the tight ends continues to play consistent and emerges, and the Colts can, you know, kind of sift through all the talent they have there. Because right now they got about 5 viable players, including Will Mallory, but Mallory's been dealing with a hamstring for the last week or so, hasn't practiced the last couple of workouts. So that's obviously not good for him, the second-year player out of Miami. But I want to see somebody in that tight end room make a play and claim to Shane Steichen that, hey, I can be reliable, I can be your guy within this offense to be the tight end that we need to take our offense over the top, especially with a guy like Anthony Richardson.
By the way, Matt, in case you're curious, and I know you are on the Express Pro Tire and Auto guest line. I just wanted to make sure that I emphasize that it's the Express Pro Tire and Auto guest line. And I appreciate you dropping me a bone earlier by saying that I had a thought-provoking question. I'm gonna balance that out by potentially now asking one that you're gonna say, what? I'm curious of this, genuinely, okay? With the new kickoff rules, and that's not to de-emphasize the importance of having a good kick return team and or coverage team of it, but it appears as though the odds of touchbacks, things like that, may continue to increase. Does that in any way, shape, or form impact the way general managers have the thought process of that 50 through, you know, like 45 to 52 player on the roster, because they don't have to have, or maybe they just naturally don't emphasize a true special teams specialist like they would have before, and thus a tiebreaker would go to the guy that is simply the better linebacker as opposed to a more versatile player?
Again, it's a great question, and I don't know, because we've just never done this before, so I don't know.
Yeah, it kind of feels like a new frontier, doesn't it?
It does, you know, and I'm completely fine with this new rule. I know for a lot of football traditionalists, it looks like a gimmick, and it's, you know, the XFL, and people look down on that league, and so I understand it. But to me, it was a total dead play. Like, it was a total just go to the bathroom, get a hot dog, you know, just pause the TV type of a play, because they kicked it off, they took a touchback, and you started the 25-yard line. It was a no-nothing type of play. So I'm actually okay with what they've done, because I think it is, if I'm accurate in this, my belief is that I think you're going to see kickoff returns around 75-80% of the time based on where they're going to be fielded on the field, right inside what they're calling that landing zone between the 20-yard line and the goal line. If you watch practice so far, and we've got one game to go off of in the Hall of Fame game, but most of these kickoffs initially are landing like around between the 15 and the 10. And they're kind of like sidewinding kicks, goofy kicks, you know, line drive kicks. They're not the traditional, like, pretty aesthetic, high, deep, end-over-end kicks that we're used to. And also, too, to your point, Jake, I don't know how special teams coordinators are going to go about trying to cover these, because it's a static play. Both teams, for the most part, are not in motion until the ball is either fielded or the ball hits the ground. And so you're taking away all of those high-speed collisions. The game is safer as far as that goes with the concussion impacts. But you want guys that are just good tacklers on the field, because at that point it's like defending a rushing play if you're on defense. So hypothetically, you'd want your best tacklers on the field, right? Your guys that are good with leverage, that can get off blocks, that can get their shoulders square to, shut down a running lane. So you might hypothetically see some starters on defense covering these kicks, or at least, your really good defensive backups, like your backup linebackers like Jalen Carlisle or Grant Stewart on there. So I think that's, again, fascinating to see how it all plays out and see how it all evolves starting on Sunday.
Is there a particular tight end, Matt, if you were to name one throughout the preseason that you're most hoping to see more from? I know Shane Steichen has mentioned in the past that this is a group that has a lot of guys that can do things well. I've argued I want someone that can do it all well, but, we're clearly not going to have that right out of the chute. Who amongst the tight ends would you like to see the most from in a short span of the preseason and the rest of camp?
Well, the guy that's been most consistent so far has been Kylan Granson, so that's been good to see. He's going into his fourth season. Obviously, it's a contract year for him, so that part's been encouraging. And then you got Jelani Woods, and Jelani's been kind of difficult, at least from my vantage point, to kind of put your thumb on, because some days he's running with the ones and other days he's down as far down as running with the third group. But he's making plays, and certainly – that's an encouraging sign after missing all of last year for him with those hamstring injuries. So I would probably say those two guys, I want to see what they can do on Sunday. I want to see Granson continue to be consistent, improve in the running game as a blocker. He's always been a willing blocker in that aspect. But I want to see where Jelani is on the depth chart as it relates to a game and just make some more plays.
You know what's interesting, Matt? I get the feeling that the Colts – they may not have 5 guys in camp that are all going to be Indianapolis Colts at tight end, but they probably have 4 to 5 guys in camp that are going to be in the NFL. In other words, whichever one, if they have to find a position elsewhere, that's one of those positions where I think they've got guys that other teams would take a look at.
I completely agree. Guy like if a Will Mallory, let's say, doesn't make the team, but he's healthy enough to be stashed on the practice squad, he might be a guy that other teams look at.
Correct. Like all of a sudden Seattle calls. Right. Correct.
Yeah. And also, too, like this kind of factors into the kickoff discussion we just had. I mean, do you want 4 and 5 tight ends on your roster? I know 5 would be really, really unique and uncharacteristic for most teams, but, given the talent and the skill set the Colts have at that position, keeping 5 going into camp is not completely outrageous. But if do you want to keep 4 and 5 tight ends, or would you want to get 1 or 2 extra linebackers or corners on your roster to play special teams and be guys that can cover kicks because of the nature of the play and the new formation now? So that part of it is really interesting and fascinating as well, because that's going to change, who you want at the back end of your roster and what positions you want to kind of backload with, given the fact that some of these guys are going to be needed to do different things on special teams this year compared to, obviously, at any other point in the history of the NFL when it comes to kickoffs.
Matt, your job comes with a lot of all of us, like we're very fortunate to do what we do, and I know you're aware of that. I am as well, to talk sports and go to games and call games. After being there at Colts camp on Monday, we had a good time there. I realized probably one of the more under-heralded or underappreciated perks of your job is being able to sit around and talk music with Jeff Gorman, right?
There's a lot of that. Absolutely.
I would think that's there are a lot of topics that you can sit around and like Gorman's a great – Jeff Gorman is one of those guys, I don't know him overly well, but he's like a great sit-around-and BS guy. Like, he is –
oh, yeah.
He's like the Kenny Chesney Hootie and the Blowfish concert of buddies. In other words, just like summertime means like just sitting around a campfire and just like having a drink and just shooting the bull, and like that guy pretty much brings that anywhere you go, right?
This is going to sound really corny and really cheesy, but I got this from my college football coach, Jake. You can probably relate to this. There's two different types of people in this world. When you boil it all down, there's two types of people in this world. There are people that you call chargers, right? People that walk into a room and they charge everybody up. Like you're happy to see them. They're happy to see you. They just sort of uplift the entire mood of the room. The energy is better, right? Those are chargers. The other people are the opposite. They're drainers, right? This person walks into the room, just sucks the energy out of the place. Jeffrey Gorman is the ultimate charger. Like, he is the guy that you can talk anything about with, and he's also like the Indianapolis version of Forrest Gump. He's lived like 17 different lives. He's had 17 different careers. You know, he's been an actor. He's been on the road with the Black Crows. You know, he's got the Colts gig. I mean, he's been on game shows. I mean, you name it from a celebrity standpoint. He's had an encounter with these people. He's got stories for days. Jeffrey is the greatest, you know, just shoot the bull with guy and just, you know, bend over and cackle and laugh because that's what he's going to do to you.
See, I'd like to think that people automatically would call me Dan Fouts or Phillip Rivers because they think of me as a Charger, but I got a feeling that behind my back everybody calls me Roto-Rooter, right? Is that right? They're like, oh, there's the human drainage system. Great, yeah. Like I'm probably even more of like a nasal drip, right?
No, there's two types of people. There's chargers and drainers. So which one are you going to be
listen,
today? Everybody needs to ask themselves that question.
Matt, I determined in college there's also two other. There's another way of saying this about people in this world. You ready?
Yep.
Two kinds of people in this world. There's guys that are with the program and guys that aren't. And, like, you just know. You walk in a room, you meet some guy for the first time, and within 5 seconds you can tell, like, this guy's just with the program. He's just cool. He's just with the program. Or immediately you're like, the tone deafness in this one reeks so loud, this guy ain't with the program. He's just not with it. I'm telling you, I have no skills in life, but one of them is I can tell somebody that's with the program immediately. Jeff Gorman with the program, right? Matt Taylor with the program as well. That program we're talking about right now is the Colts, that franchise campus he talked about. 3 practices left at Grand Park before things then move back over to West 56. Matt is on the Express Pro Tire and Auto Guest line, and he is there courtesy of Shelby Materials, which we know Jimmy is.
Those concrete and aggregate experts, Jimmy.
That is correct. Matt, always a pleasure, man. We'll talk to you soon.
All right, appreciate you guys. Charge up now. Let's go.
That's right. That is the human charger, Matt Taylor. Would you consider me a charger or a drainer?
I would consider you a charger, but is the ultimate charger of our group Eddie Garrison? Is that what we're missing today?
Listen. No, Eddie is leaving your iPhone in the heat. It drains the battery that fast, right? Like,
come on now.
Eddie is absolutely the. I mean, that guy's turned on the sieve, right? I'm kidding, of course. Of course I kid.
He's solar powered, Jake. He's blocking the sun for everybody. He's highly charged. He's ready to go.
True. That is true. I will say, in terms of solar panels, Eddie's got the biggest. All right, Jimmy's Plays of the Day coming up about 15 minutes from now. We are at the Dairy Bar just across from the Coliseum along the main thoroughfare here at the Indiana State Fair. We'll be with you until 3 o'clock. Greg Rakestraw, by the way, in for J&B, going to be broadcasting live here at the fair as well from 3 until 6. It's Query & Company for now on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan. Look at Eddie Garrison mixing it up here. Feel like all of a sudden I'm back like 23 again on the avenue.
Wait, are you saying he's charging you up, Jake?
This has like a little. He's being a charger. Eddie, I take back everything I said. This has a little bit of. Yeah, there we go. A little Funky Town from Lips Incorporated here, right?
Yep.
A little extra mix to this. By the way, Cameron Blankenship, great job as our on-site engineer. Tricia, Kelly, and Sienna have been hanging out with us as well from promotions and marketing here as we are in front of the Dairy Bar at the Indiana State Fair. Greg Rakestraw will be with you from 3 until 6 o'clock. Peyton, who just got done eating a pineapple whip, said he listens every day.
Yeah.
I said, Peyton, is that Peyton with an E or an A? And he said, with an E. P-E-Y-T-O-N. I said, how old are you? He was born in like 2001. I said, guess what, buddy? You're named for Peyton Manning, guaranteed. Well, my mom says no, but my dad says I might be. No, you are. It's like the kid, the family that walked up to Damon Bailey in like 1995 and had 2 kids with them and said, we want to introduce you to our 2 like 3-year-old kid twins, a boy and a girl named Damon and Bailey. He's like, yeah, it's a little awkward.
Coincidental, you think?
No, that was not. That certainly was not. A lot of fun out here today, though. And, Jimmy, you've eaten 3 grilled cheese sandwiches, right?
I've been taken down. The Dairy Bar has taken care of us, had the delicious grilled cheese, had the Blue Ribbon blueberry milkshake. Highly recommend that. They've taken good care of us out there, Jake. What more would you expect? A little Hoosier hospitality at the State Fair.
Absolutely love it. Speaking of Hoosier hospitality, I want to thank those who have contributed their tickets for Colts preseason game number 2 against Arizona. That game is going to be taking place on Saturday, a week from this Saturday at 7 o'clock at Lucas Oil Stadium. And if you are a season ticket holder, you are not using your tickets to that game. If you are to forward them to me via email, and again, my email address, very easy to remember, jakequery@me.com. My 2 favorite people, Jake Query and me. If you forward me those tickets, I have gotten in touch with and am working with 2 different schools, one on the north side of Indianapolis, one on the east side of Indianapolis, and I've gone through, by the way, the principals of each respective school, and then also with an organization of the United Way to be able to make sure that kids that would normally not have an opportunity to go to a Colts game will be able to go to the game with a trusted chaperone, either an adult within their family or one from the school that will be able to take them and get them a night of fun and a night to be able to enjoy something that they might not otherwise be able to do so. If you are kind enough to offer up your tickets, you forward them to me via email, and I will get them sent to those organizations. Ed, for example, just did exactly that. Ed, it is very much appreciated, and they have been sent along. Brian also earlier contributed tickets as well. So it is very much appreciated for those that have already given. And thank you to those that will, Jimmy.
Yeah, I mean, this is a kudos to you and the entire setup of getting an opportunity to be able to go see a very exciting Colts team as we continue along through the preseason, getting underway this weekend against the Denver Broncos, and then see where each of the steps are moving forward. It's a transformative year in a lot of ways, Jake. There's going to be so much on the expectations of Anthony Richardson, so much of the payoff of finally getting to see him working in a connected manner with Jonathan Taylor, what that duo is able to do, and then where does the growth come in the passing game from a quarterback that still has largely, both locally and nationally, the labels of unproven because he was limited with only 4 games under center last year.
Yeah, it's going to be certainly interesting to watch, right, what takes place. You know, I'm curious to see, for that matter, just who all we see coming up here for preseason game number 1, right? Based
on the way Shane Steichen has discussed it, and I know Eddie, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but he has still said it'll be a little later in the week before he announces how much minutes the starters will actually get or how many snaps the starters will get, correct?
That is correct.
Out in the public yet?
He said that on yesterday after practice that he would talk to the players and let them know what the plan is, and then my guess he'll reveal that tomorrow after practice before they play Denver on Sunday.
Yeah. Most importantly, do we know if the roof's open or closed? Can we start with that
The
right
coin
now?
has not been flipped yet.
Can we start that now? Roof open or roof closed? Which is it?
Let's go roof open.
Who was it just sent me a video? I think they were it was at a Major League game, and they opened the park. They opened the roof in the middle of a game.
Really?
And, yeah.
I had it happen the other way last year. We were in Milwaukee, and it started to rain, and they closed the roof.
See, in the NFL, they won't do that, right? They have to determine before the game begins whether or not it's open or closed, and then it has to stay that way, I believe, right?
I think that's right, yeah.
But again, I go back to the $110 million additional for the retractable roof was nice, but an extra $20 million to be able to put in some sort of a system to irrigate it would have been nice, so that you didn't have to,
It's the contractor's fault.
Any rain happens, and we got a major problem, right? Major problem.
Why is there a gap in the Death Star? I don't know. Why doesn't Lucas Oil have drainage?
I digress. Don't get me started on that, Jimmy. This is a battle wound that I've been dealing with for a long, long time, right? You've been working on your plays of the day. You getting ready for them?
I have. I'm excited to continue partnership with our friends at Greenfield Signs.
Are you excited about the fact that last night new streak began for the White Sox? One down, 21 to go on their way to history.
All that means is that it might give us another early opportunity for some Jake Stradamus between now and the Oregon-Purdue game. So,
of course.
Yep.
Right?
Exactly.
I'm going to say this new losing streak for the Sox, 6 games.
6 games, okay.
Yep. 6-game streak. I'm doubling down now on my predictions.
6 from now, or they started there at 1
total.
and now, okay. All right.
I got 5
so that means the Yankees are going to beat them, Jimmy, or lose to them. That's what I'm saying.
No, he's saying because they lost last night. So he's saying they're going to lose another 6 and then win. Is that the math?
They're going to lose 5 more.
Yeah, they would lose
more.
their 3rd game against the Yankees of that series.
Okay. All right. Well, I told you that last week. I figured it was destined.
The losing streak will go 6 games, and then they will get a win.
All right.
I'm just telling you.
I'm marking it down. Eddie, mark it down. Cut the tape. Save it.
Probably not even close to accurate. But what is always accurate, not only the pinpoint accuracy and the way things look from Greenfield Signs, but also Jimmy's plays of the day, which we will do on the other side as we come back to you for a final time from the Indiana Dairy Bar at the Indiana State Fair. Aquarium Company here on 93.5 and 107.5 The Fan.
Plays of the day brought to you by Greenfield Signs and Lighting. Greenfield Signs, a professional comprehensive sign company, 2 locations in central Indiana. They'll take your signage ideas and take hold of that project from design to delivery. Family owned and managed business for more than 4 generations. You don't often get an opportunity to make a first impression. Make yours the right way with the fine folks at Greenfield Signs and Lighting. Today's plays of the day, Quincy Hall was good to us yesterday in the 400-meter on the men's side. We'll go 400-meter hurdles today and take Anna Cockrell of Team USA to win a medal. That at plus 130. USA basketball in the semifinals. France awaits the winner. We'll lay 15 for Team USA. They're favored by 15 points against Serbia. We will lay the 15 there. In that same game, though, we'll take Nikola Jokic of Serbia over 20.5 total points. Anthony Edwards for Team USA, give me over 12.5 total points. In baseball, we'll lay 1.5 on the run line for the New York Yankees. They take the Los Angeles Angels on tonight in the Bronx. And our last one for you on the baseball side, you know where we're headed. We'll take cute fella.
Hey, root for me.
The Baltimore Orioles, 20 on the money line. They are still in Toronto against the Blue Jays. Eddie, any bets from you?
No, sir.
Those are your plays of the day.
By the way, I got the following text earlier today. I would like for you to decipher this. I think somebody needs to quit eating spicy foods before dinner. But here we go. You ready?
Yeah, lay it on me.
I had a very weird dream last night where every member of the fan was in my front yard. The 3 key figures were you, Eddie, and Jimmy. How about that?
Wow.
I'm touched.
I realized if I closed my eyes and listened,
well, there's more.
I could figure out who else was there. Andy, Kevin, and JMV were all there as well. But you were the 3 principal figures that I remember in terms of visually seeing you. Now,
I'm going to take that as a compliment, yeah?
If Andy had the Crocs on, that might be the best scenario, right? In that fashion.
I thought you were going to mention the fact that when they said if they would have closed their eyes, they would have been able to hear the other people that were there. The fact that Andy was in the first preceding name. No,
That's
you're right.
true
It is
of
true
all of us,
You're
right?
You're right. Yes.
If you are confessing to the fact that you had a dream where all the members of the fan were present in the dream, number 1, it's very flattering. Number 2, it's very appreciated. Number 3, it's the sign that perhaps, other hobbies might be a good idea at times. But number 4, if you're having to debate which one of us would be the primary, visual of the dream itself, that's where, admittedly, we would all get into an arm wrestling match, right?
I would agree with that. Though I would defer a little bit. Only one of us is as easily recognizable inside the barn of the dairy bar than yourself. So, I mean, you carry some type of cachet, I feel like, with you inherently there.
By the way, this guy next to us is wearing a Tennessee Titans hat. And I got to admit, that's a darn good-looking hat.
It is a cool hat. I like that.
That's a cool hat.
It's nice.
If you come out to the dairy bar, I think I'm going to be out here slinging shakes a week from yesterday, so the 14th at 4 o'clock. And I'm telling you, Jimmy, the milkshakes that I make, my days of working at the snack bar at the Riviera Club in the summertime, paying off big time because there is an art to the way that you can stack the shake, but I mean, it is a thing of beauty. I'm just here to tell you it's an absolute thing of beauty.
Am I going too far out on a limb to make a request of you that maybe we get a nice photo on Twitter X,
it's a guarantee.
Of one of those beautiful crafted
I could probably
milkshakes?
pull one up from last year. I'm telling you, they are a thing of beauty. I will simply say that.
Well,
I'll try to find one of the pictures from the past, and you're going to be highly impressed.
If you do get an opportunity, you are fine listeners and members of the company to come out here to the State Fair. Again, it's an Indiana tradition. It's one of my favorite times of the calendar year. But if you do stop by the dairy bar, can't recommend enough the Blue Ribbon Blueberry Milkshake.
Yeah, you liked that thing,
It was
right?
delicious. Yeah, it was very, very good.
You wasted no time
Highly
on that
recommended.
bad boy.
Nope, I took it right down.
We've had a lot of fun out here today, and then tomorrow, you heard Kevin mentioning it, it's kind of bizarre and surreal. Football Fridays are here, right?
Yeah, we are officially in the throes of the football season, albeit preseason-wise. You're going to blink twice. College football will begin. Week 1 of the Colts season will be here, and if you're a football fanatic like we are, Jake, you're not going to have to worry about an absence of football till about February. It's a great thing.
If the United States wins over Serbia, which, I mean, you don't want to take anything for granted, but they've already beaten them, and they get into the finals, this is the first time that the host country will be in the finals for the gold medal game in basketball since 1996. That obviously was the United States in Atlanta.
Yep.
That France matchup is not an easy one, right?
No, they've discovered something within having small ball lineups out there and making that be a complementary piece to the size they already have with Rudy Gobert and Victor Wembanyama. Even though Wembanyama is still trying to find his consistency from a scoring standpoint, I think he had 11 today, but he still wasn't very efficient from the field. They are having other guys play their best basketball at the right time, and they have length and they can play small, and it's going to be in front of their home crowd, which, again, who am I to undercut NBA-level playoff atmosphere? Everybody on Team USA has lived up to it and experienced it. I don't think it's going to be a major factor, but it's going to be a spectacle should Team USA, which I think they will, take care of Serbia. Then you have a matchup with France. I would imagine that's this weekend, if I'm not mistaken. I would pick Team USA to win that one as well. I think they're ordained once again to walk away dominantly with gold.
But let's be real, Wembanyama does not have to score a lot to be able to impact the game. You know what I mean?
No, he does not. He can step on the floor, and the impact is there.
He changes a lot of things. Eddie, what do we have lined up for tomorrow?
We'll have Good for the Heart Friday tomorrow, brought to you by Franciscan Health as always. Kevin Bowen will join us and maybe work on somebody else as well. Maybe Kyle Nenrip start to preview the high school football season with it being 2 weeks away from Friday.
It's crazy.
All right, so Greg Rakestraw is in next. He is also going to be here at the Indiana State Fairgrounds. He's going to carry you home until 6 p.m., and then we will be back with you at noon tomorrow again. Thanks, everybody, for coming by and saying hi, and thank you to the American Dairy Association of Indiana for having us out at the Dairy Bar, to Brooke Williams, in addition to, of course, everybody that I mentioned earlier that made it possible for us from a station standpoint to be out here. A lot of fun. We'll talk to you again tomorrow. Thanks for listening on this Thursday to Query & Company.